Number 5 on this list is the Hay Adams Hotel. This hotel is located in Washington, D.C. and has quite the history to it. USA Today writes, quite possibly the most famous hotel in the capital, the Hay Adams has hosted many a politician, including the Obamas before inauguration. In 1884, best friends John Hay, Abraham Lincoln's private secretary and later a Secretary of State, and Henry Adams, the author and descendant of John Quincy, built their homes on the plot of land where the hotel now sits. In 1927, 9 years after Adams' death, the houses were razed and replaced by the hotel that stands today. Adams' wife, Marion Hooper Adams, killed herself on the site in 1885, and her spirit reportedly haunts the hotel. Guests and staff say they can hear a woman crying softly, disembodied voices, and doors opening and closing on their own. What is it about hotels and people taking their own lives? It feels like so many hotels are haunted because someone left the world far too early, and usually it was their decision to do so. Marion Hooper Adams is no exception, and she has made this hotel a very inhospitable place to stay. Sometimes you hear the faint cries of a creature or spirit and they go away, but apparently her spirit absolutely wails. All the time there are screams and crying heard. In fact, it's so repetitive that it gets less scary and more of an annoyance than anything else. People literally just can't sleep at night because they're constantly listening to her crying over how her life ended. It's also a nuisance when they find things missing all the time. Marion likes to move things and steal items. Oftentimes, the valuables of these people are gone if they leave the hotel for an extended period of time and then come back. Now, maybe this part of the legend is actually just one of the hotel workers stealing stuff and blaming it on her, but either way, things will go missing if you stay here. It's overall just a horrible experience being at this hotel for an extended period of time, and I wouldn't recommend it to anyone. Number 4 on this list is Hotel Provincial. Located in New Orleans, this hotel is teeming with paranormal energy. USA Today says the 2-story Hotel Provincial with 94 rooms in the historic French Quarter is a retreat into old New Orleans. Like many New Orleans properties, it also claims to be a popular paranormal activity hub. Like other area hotels, the property acted as a medical facility for wounded Confederate soldiers and is said to still possess their spirits. From distressed soldiers and operating doctors to pools of blood, guests have reported it all. If actually staying at the property seems too spooky, it's also a stop on many walking ghost tours of the city as well. Pools of blood, guys. Literal pools of blood. Just imagine walking into your hotel room after a long day of doing stuff, getting into your PJs, moving the comforter over to your bed to slip in, and then seeing a bunch of blood just ooze out. This has actually happened to people before. That would absolutely scar me for life if something like that ever went down. Not to mention people actually getting physically scarred when they come here. People have reported getting attacked by unknown paranormal entities while staying here, waking up to a spirit completely ravaging them and having no idea how or why it's happening. This is not the type of hotel that you want to stay at, and you will literally risk your safety if you do.
Next up, in our number 3 spot, we have Isaiah Carey. Now, of course, according to the theory, there are supposed to be tons of shapeshifters in the high status rungs of the corporate, political, and Hollywood ladder. But, you know, even lizard people have to start somewhere and work their way up, I guess. Several years back in 1995, there was a reporter for NBC who became an overnight sensation after a hilarious video of him swallowing a grasshopper aired during a live broadcast. Initially, people totally fell in love with him because he had such a huge reaction and completely switched up his entire demeanor after he accidentally swallowed the bug. However, not too long after, some people started pointing out that something was a little off about the video, which led to tons of online viewers beginning to wonder if swallowing the bug was an accident after all. Maybe he wasn't just some random newscaster. Maybe he was actually an evil shape-shifting alien trying to ruin your life, or something like that, I guess. The theory started because what's strange about this video is that if you pay really close attention, it does look like his tongue is actually aiming for the bug, just like a frog reaching for a fly. Not to mention, he has quite a big tongue compared to most people, and it kinda even looks a little pointy. Is a pointy tongue the sign of a shapeshifter? I don't know the answer to that. But either way, after he swallows the bug, he immediately turns away from the camera, and some have suggested this is to hide any further evidence that he was actively shape-shifting at the time. Now, to be fair, I would probably turn away from a camera if a bug flew into my mouth without warning on live television too. But still, the way that it seems he is reaching for the bug is a little bit strange. I don't know, man. Either way, this video is hilarious, so let me know what you think. Evil reptile or just a funny human? Moving on to number 2, a security guard. So along with the monarchy, celebrities, and a newscaster from the 90s, another huge group of people that often become associated with shape-shifting are politicians. People like Obama, Hillary Clinton, Nancy Pelosi are often common targets of the shape-shifting conspiracy. But what about all the people who work for them? Could the entire government just be infiltrated by shapeshifters? I mean, it goes without saying that presidents are not gonna really go anywhere without their security guards. And honestly, what do we really know about their security? If there is reason to believe that all politicians themselves are a part of the evil alien lizard race, then wouldn't it make sense that their protection would be too? Well, speaking of, back in 2012, during a speech being made by former President Obama, footage of the audience captured a peculiar looking security guard in the crowd. At first glance, you might just think it looks like a pale, bald dude standing there, but when they pan to the side, it straight up looks like he has no ears. I mean, what is going on here? It's giving Voldemort, if you ask me. Even weirder is when the video zooms in, if you really pay attention, it kind of looks like his head is pulsating, which, truth be told, I have no clue what that could be about, but lots of people have come forward saying it is definitely footage of him shapeshifting right before our very eyes. I mean, would that mean that everyone in the CIA is a lizard person, or just a select few? I want to know how it's decided, what people get to be taken over by alien lizard overlords. Who's in charge of the coordination of these lizard people? Does their leader take over as the leader in our world, and then they put their subordinates in positions below them? Or is the leader back in Draco, handling that side of things, and they have these like agents that travel to our planet and take over our world? I just want to know how it all works. It seems like there'd be a lot of organizing and coordination involved if all the people that are supposed to be lizard people actually are. What do you guys think? And last up, in our number 1 spot today, we have a goat. Okay, so full disclosure, this one wasn't actually caught on video, so I don't have live footage to share with you guys, but nevertheless, I have to share this one with you because it might just be the most entertaining out of all of these on the list. Now, that being said, if it turned out to be true, my entire understanding what is possible and not possible would absolutely 100% be shattered, which would be obviously terrifying. So I hope this goat did not do what they think it did. In 2009, Nigerian police arrested a goat. Why is that, you ask? Well, apparently they believed someone had shapeshifted into it. Apparently a group of vigilante men came to report that while they were on patrol, they saw some hoodlums attempting to rob a car, and so they pursued them. However, according to their story, one of the thieves transformed into a black and white goat, and the other got away, claiming that the robber had used black magic to transform himself into an animal and escape. Now, that alone is a wild enough story, but remember, the police actually arrested this shape-shifting goat and held the animal / potential robber man in custody for further investigations. Reportedly, the police said, quote, "One of them escaped and the other turned into a goat. We cannot confirm the theory, but the goat is in our custody. We cannot base our information on something mystical. It is something that has to be proved scientifically, that a human being turned into a goat." Now, I have tried very hard to find out what happened to this goat since. Was it released? Did they, make the problem go away? I have no idea. I couldn't find any updated articles, but it may just be the most outrageous case of a shapeshifter I have ever read about.
Number 5 on this list is the Molly Brown House. If you live in Denver, then there is no way that you aren't familiar with this haunted place. Thrillist says you've no doubt heard of the Molly Brown House and likely passed it on the street once or twice too. Molly Brown was a notable member of Denver's elite and perhaps known best for being a Titanic survivor, and despite allegedly living a relatively happy life, visitors to the museum and staff have reported quite a bit of strange happenings. Some have smelled what's believed to be husband J.J. Brown's pipe, or have witnessed lights off and on the fritz, and staff have reported furniture being seemingly rearranged. Sometimes figures can even be seen roaming the house. A visit is worth it alone for the history, but the potential for getting a bit spooked or walking into a cold spot is definitely an added bonus. We once again have one of those locations where no one has any idea why it's haunted. It just is. Maybe it's the connection to the Titanic that has got this place acting funky. Obviously, that was a very unnatural occurrence and took the lives of tons of people in a very sad way. So I could believe that the Titanic and the survivor of the Titanic plays some role into why this place is haunted the way that it is. Good news is that this isn't the worst haunting that you can run into. Like, yes, you will get a little scared for sure. You might smell something funny, or have a ghost pull something on you, or even maybe have small valuables go missing. But ultimately, you probably shouldn't be dragged to the underworld here by some shadow demon or anything like that. So I guess if you were to visit any place on this list, then this one wouldn't be the worst. Just be prepared for what's coming, because if you aren't, then it could leave you with some serious mental trauma. Number 4 on this list is Phantom Canyon Road. You need to be very careful on this road because there is a good chance you could suffer a serious crash if you aren't. Thrillist says a haunted road is one thing, but a haunted road in Colorado means you're likely on the edge of a mountain and at some serious elevation. Phantom Canyon Road is a detour off the Gold Belt Tour byway connecting Cripple Creek and Florence, and was originally the railroad for that route. As you drive along, you can clearly see the ghost towns of Wilbur, Adelaide, and Glenbrook, and legend has it that the reason for Phantom Canyon's name is credited to sightings of a man wearing a prison uniform walking along the tracks in the 1890s. The man supposedly had been executed at the Colorado State Penitentiary a few days earlier. So yeah guys, you better have your wits about you, because if you don't, this ghost might come out and startle the crap out of you, and then the next thing you know, you're gonna be face deep into a tree somewhere. It also just adds to the horror ambiance that you're driving past several ghost towns along the way. Like, of course, they just had to be on the side of the road as you're also getting stalked by this ghost prisoner. No one really knows what this prisoner wants with you, but let's face it, I can't imagine it's good. My dude was executed back in the day, so for one, what he did was probably pretty bad to warrant a punishment like that, and then secondly, he literally got executed, and I can only guess that his ghost probably isn't too pleased about that. Y'all need to be especially careful if you're driving down this road, because at any point this guy could pop out. Number 3 on this list is the Pfister Hotel. This one has been around for a while and has got a lot of people scared who've stayed here. Travel and Leisure says the historic Pfister Hotel opened in Milwaukee in 1893 with elegant interiors and advanced technology for the times, including electricity, individual thermostat controls, and fireproofing, making it one of the most sought-after accommodations in the city. The hotel is supposedly home to a number of spooky sightings. In fact, several MLB players have reported their own personal ghost experiences in the hotel, and some are even too scared to stay there again. So guys, I actually run a podcast all about the MLB. Because I run this podcast, I'm pretty knowledgeable about the MLB. I have literally heard of this hotel before even doing research on this video. Players will flat out refuse to play here now because they get way too scared and can't get any sleep when they're there. Then obviously when they play their game the next day, they suck because they just spent the entire night basically fending for their lives in this haunted hotel. It's really too bad that it has to be this way because this is apparently one of the nicer hotels in Milwaukee. It's definitely one of the oldest, and back then it was the best place to stay if you wanted a luxurious night. Hopefully the ghosts that reside here eventually leave and we can all enjoy it once again without getting completely haunted. Number 2 on this list is the Emily Morgan Hotel. The Emily Morgan Hotel is located in Texas and is probably the most haunted in that entire state. It wasn't always the lovely and renovated hotel that it is today. Prior to this being a beautiful place to stay, this was actually a hospital and a place for doctors to stay. Obviously, during that period, it saw a lot of illness and death, and that has tainted the space. But believe it or not though, this isn't the only set of tragedies that this location has seen. Before it was a hospital, before it was anything at all, on this very site where the hotel currently sits was the Battle of the Alamo. The Battle of the Alamo was one of the most critical battles in the Texas Revolution. The battle lasted for 13 brutal days in 1836. It was between the Mexican soldiers and the Texan soldiers. The Mexican soldiers won out and killed every single one of the Texan soldiers who were there defending their fort. This battle is one of the most famous in American history for how horrible and brutal it was. It's no wonder that the land here is haunted and will infect basically anything that's built here. It also doesn't help when the hotel used to be a hospital which saw its fair share of horrible things too. Nowadays, this hotel has a whole cast of paranormal characters. Soldiers from back in the day have been spotted roaming around the halls, and patients and doctors as well. There have even been a few occasions where people have reported having visions of being on the battlefield as if they were transported there. Definitely not the spot to be staying on your vacay to Texas. And finally, number 1 on this list is La Fonda on the Plaza. This is a hotel located in New Mexico that has been host to plenty of tragedies. Travel and Leisure says this beautiful Santa Fe, New Mexico hotel has an incredibly rich history. Since 1609, a number of inns have been located on this very site, but a handful of events may be the cause of continued hauntings. According to the National Trust for Historic Preservation, the ghosts of a judge shot in the lobby, a businessman who gambled everything away at the hotel before jumping down a well, and a bride killed on her wedding night are just a few of the spirits that you may come across during your stay here. That's 3 spirits too many for me, guys. Whenever situations like this arise, I start to question things. What I mean is that, isn't this a little bit odd that 3 totally separate, completely different tragic events all took place right here at different times? Sure, it could be a coincidence, but it seems like a rather sad one if you ask me. Maybe there was always something about this space that was just a little off. Maybe people who come here just get hit with horrible luck. Maybe this hotel was built on some sort of ancient ground that it shouldn't have been built on, and this is the horrible reaction. I obviously can't say for sure, but something's fishy about this hotel, and I wouldn't recommend checking it out if I was you. Number 5 on this list is Villa Paula. This haunted place is located in Miami and has quite the interesting guest in the backyard. Thrillist says, this stately white mansion was originally constructed as the Cuban consulate in the mid-1920s, home to Consul Domingo Millard and his wife, Paula. The Cuban-born Paula was known to spend her days playing piano and drinking Cuban coffee until she died from complications from a leg amputation in 1932. Legend has it that Domingo interred his late wife in a sarcophagus laid in the backyard. The sarcophagus is still there now, covered by ficus tree roots and nearly impossible to reach. Whether or not it actually contains her mortal remains is debatable at best, but reports of her ghost persist. It's said her ghost is in different rooms there, says History Miami's Dr. Paul George. People who've lived at Villa Paula since have had existential kinds of experiences. Among them, phantom coffee smells and piano playing, a one-legged woman roaming about as well. So there is a literal sarcophagus just chilling in this person's backyard. Can you imagine having that just show up up on the house listing, I'd be like, no, we are not okay with that. I'm kind of surprised that no one has gone to go deal with the sarcophagus before. I mean, you can't just leave this thing down there like that and expect the ghost to just go away. I would imagine that Paula's spirit is probably tied to the sarcophagus, and in turn it's tied to the area. Granted, I do kind of understand why no one wants to dig it up. Think about all the crazy stuff that's happened with the pyramids. You dig up this sarcophagus and you might end up being cursed for life, which is obviously something that nobody wants. But now we're left in this awkward place where we can't get rid of the ghost, but at the same time can't live here either. That's why I'm recommending to all of you watching, just avoid Villa Paula altogether. Number 4 on this list is the Blue Anchor Pub. So this is an interesting one because this pub didn't actually start in Florida. Thrillist says this pub was built in 1840s London during Jack the Ripper times, so it should be no surprise that it's haunted. The story goes that the bar was raised in London, but its wooden interiors were sent to New York City and then onto this sleepy Florida town in 1996. Little did anyone know that the pub's original elements came with the ghost of Bertha Starkley, a cheating wife who was murdered by her husband. Today, she can be heard rattling pots, knocking things over, and wailing in the middle of the night at the Blue Anchor. Every night around 10 p.m., the time that she was murdered, Bertha likes to remind everyone she's still here, so the current owners ring the ship's bell to scare her away. So, first thing, I've never actually heard of that before, where they take a building from one continent and then just decide to move it over to another continent. This bar must look pretty cool on the inside to go to all that trouble though. Obviously, this was a bit of a mistake, and everyone would have been better served if we relocated this thing straight to the dump. Bertha doesn't care if it's in London or America or anywhere. As long as the structure of this pub is still intact, her ghost will still be floating around, which makes it very hard to enjoy a night out at this place. Like, imagine drowning several pints, going to take a piss, and then getting ambushed by some 1800s ghost in the bathroom with your pee-pee hanging out. Like, I don't know if I'd ever be able to recover from that, folks. Number 3 on this list is Central City Masonic Cemetery. Of course we had to have a cemetery on this list. No haunted place list would be complete without at least one of them. Thrillist says, founded as a mining town in the late 1800s, Central City is now known as a destination for those looking to head to the hills for a gambling fix in the casinos that now dot the area. But one thing hasn't changed. The woman in black who twice a year appears in this hilltop cemetery above the town. Known as the Columbine Lady, she comes to visit the grave of John Cameron, a prominent former resident of Central City who died in 1884. Some believe she is his fiancée, appearing to leave flowers for her lost love on November 1st, the anniversary of Cameron's death, and April 5th, a date for which the significance remains a mystery, much like the woman herself. This place is safe to go to if, of course, you do not go during these times. She's been coming for a long time, and anyone who tried to interfere with her has had to pay the price. Now, people kind of suspect that she was in a relationship with John Cameron, but there's also another theory. Many people think that John actually wronged her in his life, and that this woman in black comes twice a year to double check that John is still dead and hasn't come back to life by some means. Pretty scary tale for sure, one that you probably don't want to get involved with. Number 2 on this list is the Broadmoor. Located in Colorado Springs, this hotel would be freaking awesome if it wasn't so haunted. Thrillist says this sprawling 5-star hotel has a lot to offer for anyone seeking a relaxing and indulgent getaway. But along with the golf course, spa, and nearby zoo, there's one feature you won't find in any brochure. tour. Staff and guests alike have reported the presence of a woman, often in the penthouse where Julia Penrose, co-founder of the property, once lived. While not confirmed, Penrose's death is said to have been surrounded by a strange occurrence in which she went missing and was later found, confused and shaking in the woods nearby with no memory of how she got there. She passed away a week later, and perhaps her spirit remains, watching over the property and seeking answers about her own mysterious death. Now I am wondering, man, how did Penrose die? Like, this whole story feels like a movie or something like that. I truly think somebody needs to get in here and investigate what the heck happened here. Cause like, should we be scared of the region because this is gonna happen again? Was Julia doing something specific before she disappeared, and should we avoid doing that thing? There are just so many questions that need to be answered here, and sadly I can't do it from the comfort of Toronto. That being said, I'm also not trying to end up like Julia, and therefore will be leaving this job to somebody far more qualified. And finally, number 1 on this list is the Highlands Ranch Mansion. A truly picturesque mansion, one that's been standing for over 100 years and one that's home to a ghostly spirit. Thrillist says this sprawling stone mansion, built in 1891, is often rented for weddings and events due to its impressive structural beauty and picturesque prairie views. But it's also a historic property and somewhat of a museum of the times, with a bit of paranormal activity sprinkled in. The ghost of Julia Kistler, daughter of F. Kistler, who bought the property in 1926, is said to haunt the home, with visitors and staff alike reporting hearing a woman's sobs, seeing a silhouette figure moving about when the mansion was otherwise vacant, and lights sporadically turning on and off. I don't know about you guys, but during my wedding ceremony, I want to hear beautiful sounding music, not the sobs of some ghost woman thing. Apparently she's crying all the time, and this woman's emotions are not something to play with. There's a story where once several children were playing around here. There was a wedding ceremony scheduled here for later that day, and the children were off doing what kids do before the proceedings got underway. They ran into this ghost crying, and then they started to make fun of her. They were rude and definitely unkind, but they also didn't deserve what she did next. It's said that in a fit of rage, she flew inside their bodies and possessed each and every one of them for a short time, showing them things that were truly terrifying. Things that have ultimately changed those boys' lives and altered their mentality forever. Any ghost that's capable of doing something like that, that's one that I don't want to be around.
And coming in at number 5, we have the Houghton Mansion. Built in the 1890s in North Adams, Massachusetts, for the mayor himself, Albert Charles Houghton. This neoclassical revival-style mansion sits on 172 Church Street. A family man, Albert was the president of Arnold Print Works, a prominent textile factory in North Adams. His wife, Cordelia, daughter Mary, and himself had owned and lived on the property right up until the fatal car accident which took the lives of the family in 1914. On an early summer morning, Albert and his family, accompanied by another family, Dr. and Mrs. Dutton and their daughter, and of course the family chauffeur himself, Mr. Witters, had decided to head out into the countryside for a leisurely drive. A drive that ultimately took their lives. Unfortunately for everyone on that August 1st morning, after a steep turn, the car lost control and proceeded to screech off the road, resulting in a rolling fatal wreck. All the women in this tragedy losing their lives, with the men barely surviving from the multitude of injuries. On August 11th, just 10 days after the accident, without his wife and daughter, Albert mysteriously died in the home from what doctors think was a broken heart. It is said that 3 ghosts haunt the Houghton Mansion, including Albert himself, Albert's daughter Mary, and the driver, Mr. Witters. The mansion remained with the Houghton family until 1926, when Albert's daughter Florence and her husband sold the building to the Freemasons. This is when the spookiness really started happening. Through its multitude of use throughout the years, additions to this historic site were added on by the Masons, using it for ritual and spiritual purposes, making this story even weirder. Over the years, there have been countless paranormal witnesses claiming that the ghosts roaming the halls of the basement, Mr. Witters himself, guilt-ridden with the responsibility of the crash, and Mr. Witters took his own life shortly after returning home with injuries, and residents that have stayed at the site have claimed that the manly figure aimlessly rummaging through the basement is the driver himself. Among these claims have another spirit lurking in Mary's bedroom. It is said that overnighters have witnessed multiple bright lights and auras flying around the bedroom in the middle of the night. I wouldn't even step foot into this house, let alone set up camp and spend the night. No way. The Houghton Mansion remains a tourist attraction and hotspot for paranormal goers worldwide, and to this day is one of the most haunted and mysterious sites in all of Massachusetts. Number 4. The Hoosac Tunnel. The Hoosac Tunnel, from the Algonquin word place of stones and the Mohawk word forbidden, is a 4.75-mile active railroad tunnel in western Massachusetts that passes through the Hoosac Range, an extension of Vermont's Green Mountains, and runs from Deerfield River in the town of Florida to the city of North Adams. The construction began in 1815 and ending in 1875 with a budget of $2 million, at the time the largest tunnel ever constructed, and it was later the result of taking lives of over 200 men during its construction entirety, earning it the nickname from locals, the Bloody Pit. This haunted, barren, 5-mile, completely enclosed stretch was subject to multiple accidents and deaths over the years, giving the tunnel its haunting history and reputation of being cursed itself. With the word forbidden, did the Mohawks know something that the workers didn't? Essentially, this cold, underground, pitch-black hole became one of America's strangest gravesites, resulting in everything from mysterious gas leaks, dynamite explosions, roofs collapsing, and even mechanic failures resulting in a mass flood. For the past decades, there have been numerous paranormal activity witnesses who have documented strange events, from police officers to the freight conductors themselves. Some of the reports over the last 100 years included numerous farmers and wagons ending up in different areas of the railroad, missing hours of time. The farmers had claimed that when spending time around the railroad and its tracks, that memory and confusion would always set in. Some residents have claimed that they have even been chased out of the tunnel by an unexpected freight train chugging along aggressively through the tunnel like a bat out of hell, and then vanishing. Numerous ghostly figures resembling workers roam the dark tunnel, and if that isn't scary enough, some people, including hearing the echoes and screams of even the workers who were buried alive under the rock, still holding their tools, or even seeing ghostly figures in pumping chambers where numerous men tirelessly making rafts not to drown. The Hoosac Tunnel remains one of the most visited and haunted places, marking it just one of the sites you'll probably never find me at. Just in 2020, the tunnel was yet again subject to a mysterious collapse, resulting in months of repair. Yeah, I say stop fixing it and just let it be.
Number 3 on this list is St. Augustine's Lighthouse. Ah yes, the haunted lighthouse, a true classic. Thrillist says St. Augustine's iconic lighthouse is a Florida landmark built in 1874. But climb up its 219 steps, and it's not just the views that will take your breath away. First, there's the ghost of Joseph Andrew, the original lighthouse keeper who fell to his death while painting the 165-foot tower. Then there are the Pity's 2 daughters, who were playing with a building cart when it broke loose and slid into the nearby bay, drowning them both. While the girls giggle and run up and down the lighthouse steps, Joseph has been reported smoking cigars at the top of the lighthouse, keeping watch over his forever home. You know guys, if I had to be a ghost, then being Joseph wouldn't be the worst. I get to look out at the pretty scenery at the top of my lighthouse where hardly anyone bothers me, and I get to smoke cigars all day. Like, obviously I wouldn't want to be a ghost, but if I had to be, then this wouldn't be that bad. Either way, I'm not a ghost now. I am very much a human being, and if I want to stay a human being, then I recommend avoiding this place. It can obviously be very jarring to see 2 little ghost girls running around, and even though all of these ghosts are supposed to be pretty chill, we know that the paranormal can be unpredictable. I'm sure that there are tons of other non-haunted Florida lighthouses around if you're really pining for a good view. Number 2 on this list is Fort East Martello. If you don't like dolls, then you really won't like this one, guys. Thrillist says if there is one rule all Floridians follow, it's do not mess with Robert the doll. The 4-foot figurine has terrorized anyone who hasn't taken him seriously since he was gifted to artist Robert Jean Otto in 1904. Otto blamed any mischievous act around him on Robert the doll, effectively coining the oft-repeated Robert did it mantra. The doll currently holds court inside Fort East Martello, where he lives inside a glass case surrounded by a constant soundtrack of haunting xylophone music. The room evokes a heavy air immediately upon entering, and the walls are papered with apology notes from cocky tourists who've dared cross the world's most haunted plaything. Even the Prince of Darkness himself, Ozzy Osbourne, felt Robert's wrath when he suffered a series of health mishaps shortly after dissing the doll on his reality show. I don't like dolls, folks, especially the haunted variety, so this entry obviously had to make the list. Clearly it curses you after you see it because people literally have to come back here and ask for its forgiveness. I don't know if the notes work or not, but I guess that's all you can do when you're dealing with a haunted doll. Hopefully this doll can just chill out and stop haunting people, but in the meantime, I just flat out avoid going to this place in Florida altogether. And number 1 on this list is Casa Monica Resort and Spa. It really sucks that this place is so haunted because it's truly beautiful. Thrillist says St. Augustine's fanciest hotel is also its most haunted. In fact, this 5-star Mediterranean revival haunt is a hotbed of spectral activity. Children are heard running along the 4th floor, but no one is there. The radio in the Ponce de Leon suite randomly comes on, but no one's there. Guests of room 411 wake up to people staring at them, but no one's there. But it's the 3-story Flagler suite high in the tower that's most haunted. Maids have seen a child's handprint appear on the 1st floor bathroom mirror, and after knocking, one heard a man say, "We've been expecting you," from an empty bedroom. Its spookiest claim to fame, however, is the male ghost staring out of the top tower window. He's believed to be the ghost of one of 2 people, either Franklin Smith, the architect who built the hotel, or Henry Flagler, the man who purchased it. I personally don't care if it's the architect, the man who purchased it, or God. Anyone who says, "I've been waiting for you as I enter an empty bedroom," it's not the type of individual I want to be around. Also, where are these children coming from and what are those sounds? Okay, so you want to tell me a scary story where the architect of the building fell in love with his work and then when he died, his ghost stayed here. Alright, fine, I can buy that, I can believe that, but like, what are the children doing here? What do they have to do with this place and the architect? Maybe this is just one of those spots where it doesn't matter what happened here, it doesn't matter what will happen here in the future, it's just always destined to be haunted.
Kicking off the list at number 5, the Landmark Inn. Located in the Upper Peninsula of Michigan, right around Lake Superior, you'll find the Landmark Inn. Yeah, nice and cute and cozy. Come on in, take your coat off, stay a while. This fancy hotel was originally built in 1930 as a luxury accommodation for wealthy business owners from all around the United States. Sounds like a good time. Let's gather, let's talk shop around candles. These business owners would visit the Landmark to check on their business interests, all that good stuff. Though for its 100 years being open to guests, the hotel has had multiple reports of, you guessed it, ghosts and paranormal activity. It's so common at the Landmark Inn that the ghost hunters and paranormal investigators, they make trips out to the hotel quite often just to check in and be like, "Hey, how's it going?" And they put on their gadgets and they just check in on them. They can rely on them. The hotel's 6th floor is home to one of the saddest stories the hotel has ever seen. This story takes place in the 1930s when the hotel was a new, lively social and cultural center in town. The story revolves around a ship worker who fell in love with a local librarian and conducted their love affair in the Lilac Room. Yeah, of all places, of course. Let's go meet the Lilac Room. Sounds beautiful. And that was where the man was staying. Perfect place to meet. The couple was said to have a planned wedding upon his return from the last voyage on the sometimes treacherous Lake Superior. Unfortunately, their love affair ended in tragedy when his ship met with a storm and sank to the bottom of a lake. He never returned to the shore, and the librarian mourned the man in said Lilac Room, eventually dying herself of a broken heart. The heartbreaking story comes with many reports of the Lilac Room now being haunted. Yeah, rightfully so, as a large number of guests has reported hearing cries and whispers from a female. The female is also seen by many guests and workers on the 6th floor near the Lilac Room, crying and mourning for her loved one. A less romantic story that is associated with the hotel goes back to when it was even finished being built. During construction, a man ended the life of his girlfriend due to anger and jealousy, and this took place right after she told him about her past boyfriends and their relationship history, just normal stuff that he flipped out on, just a monster. And since the hotel was still being built, to conceal the evidence, the man buried her in the unfinished basement. Just horrible stuff. You knew I was going there and you're like, ah, please don't. To this day, decades later, visitors and employees report hearing cries from that basement, and some report hearing whispers from a female voice asking for them to find her body. I just got goosebumps. That's real goosebumps. No matter how much time goes by, these 2 women, heartbroken for different reasons, still haunt said hotel today. Number 4, Michigan Bell Telephone Building. The Bell Telephone Building can be found in downtown Grand Rapids. It's known from the legend that the building is haunted by 2 ghosts. It's always two, eh? Always gotta have pairs. Good things come in pairs. Even demons. These spirits have consistently caused chaos throughout the buildings for years in their own unique personal way. We love it. We love a unique ghost. The spirits that haunt the Bell Building are rumored to be Warren and Virginia Randall, a couple who used to reside in the Grand Rapids. Back in 1907, they moved from Detroit and bought the Judd White Mansion in Grand Rapids, which has now been torn down and built into what we now know as the Bell Telephone Building. So a lot of history there already. Over the years of living in this new house, Warren and Virginia's relationship started to crumble as Warren became very strange and paranoid almost, creating hardships in their relationship. In 1908, Virginia became tired of Warren's strange and aggressive behavior, so she decided, I'm out of here, peace. She left him. One night, 3 years after they were separated, Warren convinced Virginia into taking a car ride with him, hoping to get back together, maybe talk it out. The two of them ended up at the Judd White House where their verbal disagreement turned horrible, and Warren sadly took the life of Virginia. Then he proceeded to end his own life in the very same moment. The tragic accident that happened in the Judd White House became public knowledge, and the house was left empty with no one wanting to occupy it. Yeah, more than fair. I'm like, what's rent? Also, what happened? No. The house remained abandoned for 10 years after the accident until they finally just decided to tear the thing down completely. Thus, in 1924, they built the Bell Telephone Building on the ground, which still is in operation today. Yeah, they didn't tear that one down. That one's still going strong. Due to the horrifying scenes that happened on the grounds of the Bell Building, many claim that the spirits of Randall and Virginia still remain, haunting the new building. Some say that ghosts move into the new building and remain there to this day. I mean, I think that's possible. Ghosts like to move. They can go through walls. They can probably relocate. Through the years of operation in the office building, visitors and employees all report being harassed by strange late night calls, which have been traced back to be coming from inside of the building itself. Yeah, inside the house. You guessed it. It's upstairs. That's so scary. Due to this and the strange eerie feelings that the employees feel while they're even working, it's safe to say Randall and Virginia may remain on the grounds. Most likely. They're definitely there. It sounds like they're there. They're for sure there.
Number 3, the USS Salem. Planes, trains, and automobiles. Well, almost. A big boat. The USS Salem, a heavy cruiser built for World War II in 1945, was originally built for action. Its bold, aggressive architecture was one of the last, as it was more of a bluff to its opponents than actually a hero of war. In May 1949, War Departments handed the Salem's helm to Captain J.C. Daniel himself. The ship was built and updated with what was then the latest military tech and weapons, and it was meant to strike fear in whomever or whatever was in her way. Although the ship wasn't used in any action during World War II, it acted as a flagship, training operation, and main purpose as a threat to the naval enemy. It wasn't until the USS Salem had responded to the 1953 Ionian earthquake, or also known as the Great Kefalonia earthquake, as it hit the southern Ionian islands of Greece on August 12th, devastating the entire area. The USS Salem landed on Greek shores and acted as an improvised hospital and morgue, giving it its famous name, the Sea Witch. The ship was decommissioned shortly after its rescue and lays in Boston's harbor as a tourist attraction from all of its dark history. Some of the paranormal activities that arise on the ship include the Burning Man, who smells of rank death and can be seen in the mess hall where the bodies have been stored. Another famous apparition on the ship is the Ghost Girls, who lurk the halls of the ship. Little ghostly figures can be seen and felt on the legs of tour goers. Some people claim that the ship is even home to hellhounds, an aggressive pack of ghostly creatures that roam the ship, growling and scratching at closed doors. Yeah, the next time my dog scratches at my door, she's going up for adoption. I'm sorry. Number 2, the Lizzie Borden House. This quaint bed and breakfast located at 230 2nd Street is home to one of America's most haunted and mysterious homes. The Lizzie Borden House gets its haunt from an unsolved murder of Lizzie Borden in 1892. One of the most infamous true crime figures, known for her murdering of her father and stepmother with several blows to the head with a hatchet. Oof, ouch. Although acquitted, the killings remain unsolved to this day. This case earned notoriety, and much that the popular local children's rhyme had been linked to this death. Lizzie Borden took an axe and gave her mother 40 whacks. When she saw what she had done, she gave her father 41. That is horrible. On August 4th, 1892, Lizzie's stepmother of 27 was struck 19 times while her father Andrew was hit 11. Although Lizzie Borden was acquitted and found not guilty, the dark history draws in crowds every night for its nightly tour of the premises. The Lizzie Borden room, the infamous room where all of the murders took place, is the most requested and most popular for paranormal overnighters. And not only can you enjoy a lovely inclusive breakfast to yourself, but the nightly house tour, ghost tour, and ghost hunt attracts fans of horror every night of the year. Yeah, that's terrifying. And there's a jingle to it. I don't like that at all. And coming in at number 1, the Salem witch trials. We can't talk about haunted places in Massachusetts if we're not going to bring up the witch trials. And I'm not talking about Sabrina the Teenage Witches, or anything of cute of that nature. These famously documented witch trials need no introduction, and unfortunately lays way to one of the most horrific events based in truth. The site of mass hysteria and hangings of supposed witches took place here and occurred in colonial Massachusetts between 1692 and 1693. More than 200 people were accused of practicing witchcraft, or better known back then as the devil's magic, and 20 were ultimately executed. Eventually the colony admitted the trials were a mistake and compensated the families of those convicted. Okay, yeah, sorry. I just thought when you sneezed, you didn't say bless you, so I already don't like you, so I figured you were a witch. I'm really sorry. Since then, the story of the trials has become famous in paranoia and injustice, and it continues to baffle researchers to this day. We all know the famous play written by American playwright Arthur Miller in 1953, The Crucible, depicting the mass hysteria and drama during these trials. This was the perfect time if you didn't like someone that a strategic and untimely sinister accusation led to the demise of thy neighbor. I saw Sarah Good with the devil. I saw Goody Osborne with the devil. Who else don't I like? I saw Bridget Bishop with the devil. Abigail. End of Act 1. Since the start of the trials and hysteria in North America, other European countries shortly followed with their own mass witch hunts, resulting in somewhere between 40,000 and 60,000 tried and executed for witchcraft. That's a lot of broomsticks. The Salem Witch Trials of Salem, Massachusetts is still one of the world's biggest hotspots for mystery and paranormal story.
In at number 5 we have Palmer House Hotel. This hotel is not only considered the most haunted place in Minnesota, but to some it's considered the most haunted place in America. Located in Sauk Center, the hotel has been visited by paranormal activity investigators from across the country. Recently, the ghost hunter from the Travel Channel, Ghost Adventures, even investigated the hotel. A brothel that went by the name of the Sauk Center House occupied the current grounds of the Palmer Hotel, but the Sauk Center House burned down in 1900, and the Palmer was built in its place the following year. The Palmer Hotel was established in 1901 and is notorious for its permanent ghost residence. The most reported ghost in the hotel is named Lucy, who resides in room 17. Legend has it that Lucy was an adult worker that frequented the past building of the Sauk Center House. Though Lucy endured a terrible accident of losing her life at the hands of one of her clients. Even though this happened in the building, the Palmer Hotel can't seem to get rid of the spirit of Lucy. The ghost of Lucy is said to dislike men by slamming the room door of male guests. Some reports her slamming the room door so hard it rattles the artwork on the wall and aggressively drops the temperature. During a recent investigation, a Chicago ghost hunting outfit allegedly recorded a temperature of -1 degrees Fahrenheit during their stay. Additionally, there was a couple staying at the hotel that reported a horrifying ghost encounter in room 17, where the wife woke up in the night and suddenly saw a lanky man dressed in 1920s clothing, standing at the foot of the bed. Other active areas include the barn, room 22, home to a spirit named Raymond, rumored to be Lucy's manager. One employee of the Palmer House Hotel has confessed that their favorite paranormal experience is when guests complain about how noisy the people above them are, even though they are on the top floor. The ghost encounters and paranormal activity is so frequent at the Palmer Hotel that the current owner, Kelly Freezer, didn't believe in ghosts, but this changed when she became the owner of the hotel. In at number 4 we have the Soap Factory. The soap factory was at its peak during the soap boom of the 1880s, though now the factory has been left abandoned. The soap factory is one of the oldest factories in Minneapolis. While the process of making soap required lots of fats, lying in extremely hot temperatures, therefore it wasn't the most glorious or safest workplace in its day. Furthermore, the fats came from animal carcasses, thousands of them. The flow of blood and skin leaked into the Great River next door in the turn of the century. The building's smell of flesh made it a hot spot for stray dogs that the city paid to be rounded up and sent to the end of their life. If that's not creepy enough, there are legends regarding malpractice taking place at the factory, with animal fats from local restaurants taken to be made into soap. And there were also rumors of child labor at the factory, but whatever you choose to believe, there is no denying that the site contains negative energy. Now the basement of the abandoned factory is used for haunted tours. The tour is so scary in fact that guests have to sign a waiver and have to be 18 to go on the tour.
Number 3, the Henderson Castle. Established in 1895, this castle is a hub for many spirits and paranormal activity. I mean, it's a castle. The original owners, Frank and Mary Henderson, are said to haunt the castle as they passed away back in 1899. Yeah, I wouldn't want to leave either. living or dead. Additionally, other spirits are said to reside in the castle, a young girl and a dog. Yeah, a dog! We've got a dog ghost. How do you deal with that? Ghost barks? That'd be so scary. In 2005, the castle was occupied by Peter Livingstone McNellis and his family. When the family resided in the castle, Livingstone's son, Vincent, before anyone else had ever reported anything strange happening in the house, he said that he saw an apparition of a figure in the Victorian room, originally the changing room for one Mary Henderson. The son said while pointing at a picture of a woman dressed in an old period clothing, some Victorian clothing, that was the woman he saw wearing that same clothing. I would throw up. If someone ever said that, I'd be like, oh, this Victorian painting? And one former innkeeper who stayed at the castle each night told Livingstone on numerous occasions that she also felt a presence coming up and down the staircase, a movement passing her on the stairs when she would walk by. Ugh, these are scary. Top 5 is like, or top 10 is scary fish. This is hard. This is some scary stuff. 9 a.m. I'm already getting spooked. While now the castle is being used for a bed and breakfast, guests have fallen victim to ghosts as well. Yeah, it's not over yet. The Henderson Castle is a very paranormal active ground that many ghost hunters have investigated, and they've confirmed, in fact, that it's haunted by spirits. I trust them. The people that can go into these castles and physically do this, I'm like, yep, I trust your opinion, whatever. He just comes out, he's like, haunted. Like, thanks, Daryl. This has been confirmed as these ghosts have interacted with many paranormal investigator teams, in addition to guests and employees of the castle. Yeah, they're just harassing everyone. The ghosts seem to be friendly, not evil whatsoever, so that's a good side, I guess, to being haunted by ghosts. They have been known to speak and physically touch guests and employees. Just they touch them on their back, side, shoulder, always in the back. You never see it coming. It's always in this region. Not only that, but there's also been reports of radios making weird noises or turning on by themselves, even though they're either unplugged or just either turned off. Both bad, both scary. Guests and employees have also reported hearing footsteps upstairs, slamming doors from unexplainable sources, and some ghosts have been wearing the clothes that they wore while they were alive. Clothes that they wore while they died in, probably. As the spirit of Mary Henderson has been reported as many guests at the top of the staircase, wearing her usual getup. Imagine being like a clown, like a jester, and then you die in that, and that's what you look like as a ghost. You're like, what? I was doing a mascot gig. I don't look like a shark forever. Number 2, Allegan Lodge. The old Allegan Elk Lodge was built in 1909. It was used as a psychiatric and TB hospital until its closure in 1948. The lodge was a former hospital that was frequented by mobster Al Capone, and one that many say is haunted by at least 7 different ghosts. Yeah, you thought 2 was bad. Add 5 more. Now we got 7 ghosts. And it's currently on the auction block in Allegan. If you have a lot of money and bravery, there you go. While the structure was originally built by physician John Robinson in 1909, somewhere in the 1920s, it was sold to a doctor from the Chicago area who had allegedly had underworld ties. That's a great doctor. That's just who you want working on your pancreas. Brought pancreas back today. The facility was supposedly frequented by mafia figures such as Al Capone, the Prohibition-era Chicago mob boss, and his men. Yeah, well, they needed medical attention or when they simply needed to get away from Chicago, this is where they'd go. The old Elks Lodge, Al Capone. He's like, oh, it's cozy. They have great soup. Years later, it was used as an Eagles Lodge and an Elks Lodge. And in 2010, it was acquired by an Allegan woman who began renovating the property, but now she wants to sell it. Yeah, can't imagine why. Because one of the former doctors who owns the lodge had underworld ties, maybe? Something like that? I don't know. It led to a lot of people believing that there's a lot of undercover stuff about this lodge. It's still happening to this day. I don't know why I'm doing this like it's like over there, but I'm like, there's something going on in that lodge. Especially as it's known to hold 7 different paranormal entities, like I mentioned previously. For many years, employees and visitors have told stories of spirits who relentlessly roam the building. Some of the paranormal activity that has been experienced here includes cabinets opening up by themselves in the kitchen, sounds of children laughing, it's always calming in the morning, photographic anomalies captured throughout the building, and like you name it, shadowy figures in the basement, all bad. Notably where the morgue was located, the basement, good stuff, a lot of stuff happening in there. They'd be knocking on the front door, indiscernible conversations, and ringing at the doorbell when no one was present. Yeah, good stuff. Again, I have goosebumps, they're back. Guests also heard footsteps and the sound of hospital activity long after being used as one. They'd also see full-bodied apparitions of children. They would just see ghost children. That would be it. I wouldn't have to see any more. I would just see the ghost children and be like, again, see ya. Like that's. And finally, number 1, Point O Barks Lighthouse. There are plenty of lighthouses in Michigan, and plenty of them are rumored to be haunted, of course, because they're lighthouses and they're creepy, as they normally are. And this one is no exception. Built in 1847, real old, a lot of history with this one. The lighthouse is located on Point O Barks. As the legend goes, early to mid 1800s, Peter Shook had been Point O Barks' first lighthouse keeper. He was the OG. In 1849, Peter drowned while he and a couple of friends were sailing to Port Huron to pick up supplies for for the lighthouse. He left behind 8 kids and his wife Catherine, and she took over at that point for Peter's duties, thus becoming Michigan's first female lighthouse keeper. Since then, people have claimed to see the spirit of Catherine walking along the edge of a cliff dressed in mourning clothes, as she is still heartbroken by the loss of her lover, of course. As we talked about earlier, ghosts like to wear the things that they were, that they passed away in. Again, would hate to be a clown outfit, that would suck. She had also been spotted in the window of the 2nd floor wearing an apron, along with an apparition being seen, footsteps ascending and descending the tower stairs, and giggling has also been heard. Yeah, you hear giggling and there's cold spots, therefore haunted, for sure haunted. And the smell of burnt tobacco has also been wafting through the air many a times. Lighthouses are pretty stressful, more than fair. When paranormal investigators, specifically the Southeast Michigan Paranormal Society team, when they had a 2-day intensive investigation after their search, they concluded that they believe that there is every reason for the lighthouse to be haunted. The investigators did some electric voice phenomenon work in the living room, and then they heard loud thuds from overheard. Like, where do they get this gear from, Like, I want this gear. I have some questions of myself going on in the apartment. I want to swing it around a bit. A sound of something scraping along the floor as well, and additionally, during their investigation, the rocking chair had moved 2 feet and was still moving. Just love to keep rocking around. We love that. We love haunted rocking chairs. We love unexplainable forces. While they were upstairs, they also reported hearing heavy footsteps from another unknown source. So many ghosts, there's rocking chairs, people moving around, working in the basement. It doesn't sound like the afterlife is a peaceful one, if I'm being honest. Sounds like there's a lot of to do after you die. I'm not really looking forward to it. I thought I could just kind of float around in your paintings, but now it sounds like I'm gonna have to go and wear this. Wear my morning clothes, who knows?
Number 5 on this list is the Carolina Inn. This inn has actually been voted one of the most haunted in America by a few different lists. The University of North Carolina says the Carolina Inn was built in 1924 and quickly became a popular hotel for visitors and graduates of the university. In 1948, the Carolina Inn's most long-lasting guests checked in and apparently never left. Dr. William Jacox was a fun-loving man with a witty sense of humor, had recently retired from practicing medicine, and decided to make the Carolina Inn his final home. He lived in room 252 for 17 years before his death in 1965. As shared by the Carolina Inn, guests that have stayed in Jacox's old room report being inexplicably locked out of the suite. One time, the lock was so stubborn that a workman had to use a ladder to break into the room. Visitors have also noticed strange occurrences such as messy bath mats and previously closed curtains being pulled wide open. Some have encountered the smell of freshly cut flowers despite none being in the room, and felt their bodies become strangely cold for no apparent reason. This is only part of the stuff that goes down at this room as well, guys. Some people have reported seeing a poorly dressed man approach them looking for an unlocked door, and then if they show it to him, he runs away screaming. It's thought that this is the ghost of Dr. William Jacox. I don't know why unlocked doors scare this dude so much, but anyone who's gonna spend 17 years in this hotel is probably a bit of a weird dude. Unless you want to deal with a crazy old doctor ghost messing with you all vacation, I'd stay at a different inn. Number 4 on this list is the New Hanover County Library. I don't know why, guys, but something about haunted libraries is just so intriguing to me. Like, it just seems so mystical and mysterious, I guess. This haunted library is located right in Wilmington. There is a woman that haunts this place who's believed to be a patron. Apparently, she used to donate quite generously to this library, and in death doesn't want to leave it behind. She isn't the only ghost that walks the halls here and haunts the books. There's a male poltergeist who makes his presence quite known as well. He apparently died in a duel that happened here many years ago before this land was turned into a library. Nowadays, these two ghosts make it very hard to do any serious learning or studying considering they haunt the place so much. The woman isn't too bad, she just shows up and looks super creepy, but from my reading, she only actually punishes those who cause harm to the library or make fun of it. Those who come here to learn and to read, she leaves them be for the most part. The man, however, is certainly quite the pest. He often messes with those that come here and makes it very difficult for people to accomplish anything. I love libraries, I think that we should all go to them more often, but maybe just not this one specifically.
In at number 3 we have First Avenue. Located in downtown Minneapolis, the building, which is now home to this nightclub, has a rounded front, is painted black, and has white stars on its sidewalls with the names of many of the musical talents who have done shows in one of these 3 event rooms found inside. Before it was famous for being a nightclub, the First Avenue was a Greyhound depot. The First Avenue legend has to do with the building's former self, the great Art Deco Greyhound bus center that opened on 7th Street in 1930. 1947. The story goes that a young woman went to the station to meet her boyfriend who was returning home from World War II. When she was informed that he had died in combat, she ran into the restroom and ended her life due to heartbreak. In recent years, multiple First Avenue staffers have reported seeing a ghost in the washroom. The ghost has been reportedly described as a woman always in a green army jacket and sometimes seen dancing at the club along with other ghosts. Legend says that many homeless people died in the bus station as well, and they can be seen dancing with the women. There have been reports of another spirit haunting the nightclub. The staffers nicknamed this spirit Slippy, while this particular ghost is said to make a balloon appear from nowhere which then floats up and down the staircase on its own. Dave Schrader, paranormal investigator, visited First Avenue to assess the paranormal activity in the building multiple times and has concluded that the building is indeed haunted by many spirits, indicating that the record room is the most active area of the site. While DJs that have played at the venue have reported frequently hearing strange noises through their headphones such as growls, voices and screams, other performers report their equipment being pushed off stage with no explanation. In at number 2 we have Schmidt Brewery. Schmidt Brewery became the largest in Minnesota by 1860, producing 1,200 barrels annually and shipping them as far south as Tennessee. It was restructured as the St. Paul Brewing Company in 1898 before being sold to Jacob Schmidt soon after in 1900. Since its opening in 1884, many ghost hunters have visited the Schmidt Brewery to experience some of the many rumored paranormal activities. The brewery has been the site of many constant unexplainable instances, from fires to people losing their lives to terrible accidents. This place has seen a lot of scary sights. While the victims of these events linger around to haunt the grounds of the brewery, even though the building is now used as an artist's loft, that doesn't take away the scary history of the Schmidt Brewery. While most of the ghosts that haunt the grounds of the old brewery have to do with ordinary brewery workers dying in terrible accidents, in 1896 2 workers lost their lives in an explosion. Furthermore, in 1902 a worker fell down an unmarked elevator shaft. Additionally, in 1904 Matthew Colo, a worker whose job was to light gas lamps in the brewery, lost his life from inhaling flames. Schmidt Brewery has been a St. Paul haunt since 1855 for more than a couple of reasons, when owner Jacob Schmidt took down the original North Star Brewery sign, replacing it with his namesake, Jacob Schmidt Brewing Company. The entire brewery burned down a year later in 1900. Plenty of other bad luck would also follow on the grounds of the brewery, suspected due to the tragic death of many workers of the brewery. And finally, in at number 1 we have Four Pals Restaurant. Known as the most haunted restaurant in Minnesota, the Four Pal has a tragic story. Located in St. Paul, Four Pals was a high-end restaurant located in Irvine Park, and the restaurant is a beautiful Victorian mansion. Sadly though, the restaurant is now permanently closed. The dark stories about Four Pals Restaurant hint that the historic mansion is seriously haunted. As the story goes, back in the late 1800s, Joseph Four Pal had an affair with the mansion's maid, Molly. It was not long before his wife discovered this relationship and love for Mary. Therefore, the wife became extremely jealous of the servant and assigned Molly to do chores that would keep her away from the bedrooms and away from Joseph. Molly became pregnant and Joseph ended the affair, but Molly was so distraught about the whole situation that she ended her life. According to reports, she ended her life in the attic. Joseph was upset when he heard the news about Molly that he figured he could not stay in the house where his beloved died. One day he went out for a walk and ended his life as well. Since then, restaurant guests and employees have reported creepy sightings of a woman dressed in 1800s attire, lights turning off and on by themselves, and strange noises coming from the attic. In one case, the disturbances were so chaotic that it led to an investigation by the St. Paul police, whose canine dog refused to enter the attic. It is said that Joseph and Molly both haunt Four Pals, but many guests have said Molly is more active spirit. People say they have seen the two walking around the dining area, but Molly bangs on walls and smashes glasses. Some people say they can smell her lavender perfume. That being said, Mr. Four Pal is also sometimes seen, and his ghost has been reported wearing a dark waistcoat, silk vest, pinstripe trousers, and a derby hat. He can be seen going to the basement, at which time the lights flicker and shuffling noises are heard. He roams the house and has been caught on film many times. The former staff of the restaurant have also reported on many occasions when they would go floor by floor turning off lights as they close down for the night. Then when the staff members get in their cars to leave, they'll notice the top floor light is on. Nevertheless, if the restaurant is haunted, the story of Mr. Four Pal and Molly is one of the most devastating to date.
At number 5, the Ohio State Reformatory. The Ohio State Reformatory, a haunting architectural marvel that carries within its walls the echoes of a troubled past. Constructed in the late 19th century, this imposing Victorian Gothic structure was initially intended to embody progressive correctional ideals. However, over time, it became synonymous with stories of despair, shuddering, and unexplained phenomena, solidifying its reputation as one of the most haunted places in the United States. The reformatory's history is rife with tales of harsh conditions, overcrowding, dwelling and the struggles of those who were incarcerated within its confines. These factors, coupled with the tragic stories of inmates who lived and died there, have contributed to the pervasive sense of unease that envelops the site. Visitors often report strange occurrences, such as unexplained footsteps echoing through the empty halls, eerie whispers that seem to float on the air, and chilling cold spots that hint at otherworldly presences. In some cases, there have even been disappearances and killings, alluding to the dark spectral forces that inhabit the reformatory. One of the most famous aspects of the Ohio State Reformatory is its appearance in the movie The Shawshank Redemption. While the film highlighted the reformatory's grim atmosphere, its true history is far richer and more complex. The architecture itself tells a tale of a bygone era, with its intricate detailing and imposing structure standing as a stark contrast to the stories of suffering that unfolded within its walls. Guided tours and events at the reformatory allow visitors to explore its various sections, from the imposing cell blocks to the eerie solitary confinement area, known as the Hole, creating an immersive experience that evokes a sense of timelessness. The stark contrast between the ornate exterior and the haunting interior serves as a poignant reminder of the complex and often troubling history that defines the reformatory. While some may dismiss claims of paranormal activity as mere superstition, the stories and experiences recounted by those who have visited the Ohio State Reformatory are difficult to ignore. The combination of a somber history, decaying architecture, and the mysterious ambience that permeates the air makes for an unforgettable experience that lingers long after the visit is over. Number 4. Molly Stark Sanatorium. The former Molly Stark Hospital, located in Molly Stark Park in Ohio, is a haunting relic of a bygone era. Once a treatment center for tuberculosis patients, the decaying building exudes a ghoulish aura, with vines snaking over ancient brick, shattered windows, and faded stone. Closed for over 2 decades, the hospital's dilapidated state has attracted ghost hunters and paranormal enthusiasts, leading to the erection of a barbed wire fence to deter trespassers. Owned by the Stark County Park District, the property offers public tours to its exterior, revealing intricate architectural details and a fascinating history. The hospital, originally constructed in 1929 at a cost of around $1 million, treated tuberculosis patients until the 1970s, and later served as a mental health facility and a rehabilitation center for those suffering with addiction. The tour provides insights into the hospital's architectural flourishes, including a portico and stone-carved religious symbols, reflective of the faith that played a role in caring for those afflicted by tuberculosis. The hospital's conditions quickly began to decline in the mid-1970s, after reports of ghost sightings within the hospital. Patients and staff alike bore witness to the likes of victims of tuberculosis, despite the fact that treatment for the illness was invented 20 years prior. These now-deceased patients were known to disrupt medical examinations, cause mass hysteria among patients and staff, and even cause many disappearances within the hospital. The amount of distress these apparitions caused eventually led to the hospital's closure in 1995. Nowadays, the site's haunted reputation draws curiosity seekers, but the tour focused mostly on the building's history rather than the many ghosts that still scuffle about the old hospital.
Number 3 on this list is Fort Fisher. Fort Fisher was a critical fort during the American Civil War. It was used by the Confederate Army and was pretty instrumental for them from 1861 to 1865. This fort was used to protect an important trade post there that the Army needed. They defended this place for those 4 years, but then in 1865, the Union Army came in and was finally able to capture it. This battle was a very bloody one and was actually huge for the Union Army and the overall scope of the war. Apparently there was a lot of death at this fort, and that death, it's never really gone away. Now, this fort is teeming with paranormal activity. Visitors will often report hearing gunshots coming from thin air, the sounds of many footsteps all running at once as if people were charging ahead. Orbs of energy appear in front of them from no apparent source. There are 2 very famous ghosts that haunt this place as well: Robert E. Harrell and General William Whitling. Robert was apparently an outcast who died under mysterious circumstances and has not been able to rest since. The general was actually taken prisoner and killed at Fort Columbus, but he returned to this place because he feels regret for how he failed in life. He was apparently responsible for defending this place and was not capable of doing so. A very haunted fort that I wouldn't recommend going to. Number 2 on this list is Lydia's Bridge. Who is Lydia and why does she have a bridge and why is it haunted? Well, Lydia is quite the famous ghost. This is a true ghost. Like when you think of a ghost and a ghost story, this meets all the criteria for a good one. Spectrum Local News says people traveling between Jamestown and Greensboro on US Highway 70A said they've encountered the ghost of Lydia, a hitchhiker. If she's picked up, she gets into the car and vanishes before she reaches the requested destination. Various versions of the Lydia legend have been passed along over the years, and there are apparently 11 different versions of the story that are set in North Carolina. It's common for folks to go ghost hunting for Lydia near the bridge. In the book Looking for Lydia, historians Michael Reniger and Amy Greer cite the 1923 death of Annie C. Johnson as the real-life Lydia who died after a car flipped in 1920. That is a story with some history, man. Literally since the 1920s this has been going on, and there are 11 different versions of the story. A story like this isn't just made up. It's not just something that one person posted on Creepypasta that became a thing. No, this has been part of the identity of North Carolina for a century. Countless people have picked up this woman and then had her disappear right before their very eyes. Car accidents have happened from people driving this woman and then getting so shocked that they spin off the road when she disappears. Lydia, or Annie, is a real ghost who stalks drivers along this road and especially this bridge. Although she isn't inherently evil in nature, as I said before, accidents have happened when people realize they were just driving a ghost around. I have no idea where Lydia is trying to get to, but trust me, you probably don't want to be the person to take her there. And finally, number 1 on this list is the Devil's Tramping Grounds. This is in reference to a very strange patch of soil in North Carolina. For decades, this circle of dirt has allowed nothing to grow on it at all, whilst the area surrounding it is home to luscious wildlife. The Sun Journal says regional legend maintains that Satan frequents the area on his nightly walks, pacing the circle as he contemplates his nefarious deeds. Normal vegetation surrounds the circle, but only a wiry grass grows inside it, and no plant life of any kind can be found on the path itself. Visitors have also claimed to see red glowing eyes in the circle. Now, there could be any number of reasons for why nothing is growing on this patch of dirt. Simply because an area of land cannot grow wildlife doesn't automatically mean the devil himself has anything to do with it. But throw in the fact that there are 2 red glowing eyes there, plus a few other creepy occurrences, and we might just have something demonic afoot. Locals have reported putting objects in the center of the circle, then coming back a little while later and having those same items moved outside the circle, as if someone or something did this deliberately. The thinking is that this circle is a place used by the devil to dance or to perform rituals that we don't understand. Having things inside his circle of death doesn't make for a great dancing spot or sacrificial zone, so those things need to get moved. That's why we see the red eyes in the night, and there's an overwhelming sensation of dread in the area. It's the devil doing his devilish things. A daring reporter actually decided to test this theory one evening and slept in the exact spot in a tent. He said that the entire evening he heard the distinct sounds of dancing footprints outside his tent, but couldn't spot anything when he looked out. My dude literally could have been like 1 foot away from the actual devil. No idea how he managed to make it through the entire night, but honestly, solid respect. Either way, this guy's story is an exception, not the norm. I'd avoid this place at all costs, cause if you don't, the devil might actually make you pay for it. Number 5 on this list is the Thunderbird Youth Academy. The Thunderbird Youth Academy is located in Pryor and is deeply haunted with the ghosts of students who have long passed. Back in 1942, it suffered a horrible tragedy where a lot of the children staying here passed away. Back then it was an orphanage, and it was still years before it would become a military school. It got hit hard with a devastating tornado that the building simply wasn't ready for. Tons of the children who lived there perished due to the storm, and now their ghosts are said to linger here. Stories where people will wake up in their beds and find literally other children lying in them staring directly at them are far too common. These stories also don't even factor in one of the most famous ghosts there, Hector. Hector is a young boy who haunts the 3rd Platoon building. Hector's story is far more graphic than the other children who died. It's not confirmed, but some say that the cook took Hector's life and did it in a fashion that I can't go into detail on YouTube about. Either way, now his spirit forever haunts this building and all of those who reside in it. I personally would never want to go to military school anyways as a kid, but having it be haunted would make it even worse. Number 4 on this list is the Tulsa Theater. It's weird how some places attract ghosts and spirits more than others. Theaters are one of the most prominent spots for paranormal presences, and this theater is no exception. News Oklahoma says, Tulsa Theater, formerly known as Brady Theater, used to be a vaudeville house providing entertainment to audiences. The space went through a lot over the years, including being abandoned and almost destroyed. But after renovations and a name change, the Tulsa Theater reopened. Legend is the space is haunted by an Italian opera singer named Enrico Caruso. Caruso took in the sights around town while in Tulsa to perform. He wanted to see the oil wells and how they made them, said French. And as they came back, it was raining, it was cold, miserable, and the car broke down. Despite already being sick, Caruso made the journey back on foot in the rain to give what turned out to be his last performance ever. He had a great performance according to history, French said. It was one of his best. Standing ovations in the whole 9 yards. Unfortunately, after returning to Italy, Caruso died. French said many say Tulsa caused Caruso's demise, and that's why it's believed he haunts the theater. Even Caruso's manager named Tulsa as the reason for his death. But it goes deeper than just Caruso. When it was the Brady Theater, the building is rumored to have played a role in the 1921 Tulsa Race Massacre. I mean, it played a huge role. It housed some of the victims. There are rumors they died inside and some other horrible things that happened to them, French said. We actually captured electronic video phenomena evidence that almost confirms all of the stories there. The Tulsa Race Massacre was a horrible display of hate and racism. On May 31st in 1921, a bunch of white residents who had been given weapons by city officials attacked a bunch of black residents. This incident lasted over 24 hours and saw more than 800 people get injured and at least 36 people die. A horrifying tragedy that never should have occurred. It's no wonder that any place tied to this incident could be haunted.
And number 3, South Base Island Lighthouse. Perched atop the rugged cliffs of South Base Island in Put-in Bay, the historic lighthouse stands as both a beacon of maritime history and a portal to a realm of ghostly legends. The South Base Island Lighthouse, with its iconic red brick tower and majestic views of Lake Erie, cast a haunting silhouette against the ever-changing skies, drawing visitors from far and wide who seek to unravel the mysteries that have enshrouded this hallowed site for decades. Built in 1897, the South Base Island Lighthouse served as a vital navigational aid for ships traversing the treacherous waters of Lake Erie. Its light guided sailors through storms and fog, ensuring safe passage to the shores. However, as time marched on and technology advanced, the lighthouse's significance diminished, eventually leading to its decommissioning in the mid-20th century. But as darkness descends upon the island, the lighthouse takes on an air of malevolence. The wind howls like the mournful wails of lost souls, while the crashing waves below create a symphony of despair. Those brave enough to step inside confront an unsettling stillness, punctuated only by the occasional creak of floorboards under an invisible, unrelenting force. Phantom shadows dance along the walls. There are ethereal forms casting an ominous dance that defies explanation. Visitors recount harrowing tales of icy fingers brushing against their skin, of ghostly whispers that worm their way into their minds, and of an overpowering sense of dread that lingers long after they've fled the premises. The lighthouse had to be shut down after several reports of it turning off at random times, or guiding sailors towards dangerous areas, despite being completely unmanned. One can only assume that this mischief was the work of the spirits that haunt the lighthouse. This forsaken lighthouse has earned its place among the most terrifying locales in Ohio, a reputation upheld by relentless tales of ghostly apparitions, unexplainable phenomena, and an atmosphere so saturated with maleficent energy that it leaves visitors trembling in its wake. Whether driven by morbid curiosity or a thirst for the macabre, those who dare to cross the threshold into the South Base Island Lighthouse do so at their own peril. For here, in the heart of the lighthouse's labyrinthine corridors, the boundary between the living and the spectral blurs, and the chilling embrace of the unknown reaches out to ensnare those who dare to seek it. And at number 2, Moonville Tunnel. Deep within the remote woods of southeastern Ohio lies a sinister enigma shrouded in darkness, the Moonville Tunnel. This desolate and haunted passage, long abandoned by the living, stands as a portal to a realm where reality intertwines with the supernatural, and where the unwary may find themselves vanishing into the void if they dare to tread too close. The Moonville Tunnel, a vestige of an era past, was once a vital conduit for a long-forgotten railway. Yet, as time eroded the tracks and decay seeped into its very stones, a chilling transformation occurred. Stories of ghastly apparitions and eerie encounters have swirled around the tunnel, like the mist that clings to its mouth. Tales whispered among locals with a mixture of dread and fascination. Daredevil adventurers who have ventured into the tunnel speak of an oppressive, tangible malevolence that envelops the air, an unrelenting presence that seems to watch, to wait, and to hunger for the unsuspecting. Perhaps the most sinister tale is that of the Moonville Tunnel's insatiable appetite for souls. It is said that if you step foot into the tunnel around 3 a.m., when the boundaries between worlds are at their thinnest, you may never step back out. Foolhardy wanderers who venture into its depths during the witching hour risk becoming mere specters themselves, forever trapped in a twilight realm of torment and despair. The tunnel's history is steeped in tragedy, adding to its ominous aura. Legends tell of a brakeman who met a grisly end beneath the wheels of an oncoming train, his anguished spirit now condemned to roam the dark expanse. Others speak of mournful phantom cries that pierce the silence, echoing the heart-wrenching despair of a long-lost soul. Visitors who dare to challenge the Moonville Tunnel's eerie reputation tread a perilous path, as the moonlight filters through the dense canopy, casting ghostly shadows upon the tunnel's yawning maw. A feeling of being watched intensifies. Footsteps echo with an eerie resonance, their sound swallowed by the blackness ahead. Time itself seems to warp, stretching and distorting reality as though beckoning the unwary to step beyond the veil. To approach the Moonville Tunnel is to court danger, to teeter on the precipice of the unknown. It is a place where the boundary between the living and the dead blurs, where the rules of our reality are subverted by forces beyond comprehension. As the wind whispers secrets and the very earth seems to hold its breath, those who venture too close may find themselves joining the ranks of the vanished, a chilling testament to the dark and untamed forces that linger within the haunted confines of Moonville Tunnel. Coming in at number 1, Franklin Castle. Franklin Castle, an imposing Victorian mansion nestled in the heart of Cleveland, Ohio, stands as an enigmatic edifice brimming with dark secrets and eerie tales that have earned it a reputation as one of the most haunted houses in America. With its intricate architecture, turrets, and ornate details, the castle's exterior belies the chilling stories that have swirled around it for generations. Built in the late 19th century by German immigrant and banker Hans Tiedemann, the Franklin Castle was intended to be a symbol of prosperity and opulence. However, as time passed, the mansion's grandeur began to fade, replaced by rumors of tragedy, scandal, and paranormal activity that would come to define its legacy. The Tiedemann family was plagued by a series of untimely deaths, including the passing of several youngsters and Tiedemann's wife. The pervasive aura of grief seemed to seep into the very walls of the castle, fostering an atmosphere of melancholy and despair. It is said that the spirits of the deceased still linger within its chambers, their presence felt by those who dare to venture inside. Over the years, reports of ghostly apparitions, disembodied voices, and unexplained phenomena have only added to the castle's haunted mystique. Visitors and paranormal enthusiasts alike have recounted chilling experiences, from encountering spectral figures that vanish into thin air, to hearing whispers that seem to drift from empty rooms. Cold spots and sudden drops in temperature are often attributed to the presence of otherworldly entities, and of course the few unlucky folks who, seemingly out of random, would receive the same curse as Tiedemann all those years ago. The castle's haunted reputation has been further fueled by the stories of secret passageways, hidden rooms, and a mysterious woman in black who is said to roam the halls. These elements, combined with the mansion's unsettling history, have led to countless investigations by ghost hunters and paranormal experts seeking to unlock its mysteries.
Number 5 on this list is the Myrtles Plantation. The Myrtles Plantation is located in St. Francisville, Louisiana, and is home to a plethora of ghosts. The plantation was established in 1796 and is said to have been built on an ancient burial grounds. These burial grounds have obviously contributed to the deep spiritual presence that it has, and the reports that there are 12 different ghosts that currently occupy the space. However, the spirit that is most commonly seen wandering the place wasn't from these burial grounds at all, but an incident that occurred at the plantation many years ago. Chloe, a slave of the plantation in the early 1800s, was eavesdropping one day on a conversation between the family who owned the plantation. The punishment was swift and drastic, and they cut off one of Chloe's ears so that she would never do it again. Chloe obviously didn't take too kindly to this, and even though she knew it would most likely mean her death, wanted to retaliate. She did so by poisoning a birthday cake, which in turn killed two of the owner's daughters. For this, she was put to death and executed. However, it is said that Chloe's spirit still wanders the ground to this day and is the most commonly spotted ghost at this plantation. She will be wearing a turban to cover up her ear that was chopped off when she was alive. If you ever see this ghost, people say that you immediately get filled with a deep and solemn depression that hangs over you for quite some time. People speculate that the deep depression that you feel after encountering her may have been the way that she felt while she was alive. Number 4 on this list is the Whaley House. The Whaley House is located in San Diego, California, and is said by some to be the most haunted home in all of the United States. The ghost who haunts the home is not your standard phantom. In fact, it is the spirit of a convicted high-profile robber from the 1850s. Yankee Jim had a good run of thievery, but was inevitably unable to avoid the gallows and was hung off of the back of a wagon in 1852. Thomas Whaley was at that hanging and watched as Yankee Jim died. This did not deter him though from purchasing the very land where it happened. It was at this spot that he proceeded to build what is known today as the Whaley House. It didn't take very long at this home though before the Whaleys quickly realized the errors of their ways. It is said that it took only a few weeks of living there before they started to notice strange ongoings at the home. Doors would slam without anyone around them at all. They may even lock themselves as well with you inside. Footsteps could be heard moving around the home at all hours throughout the day. These footsteps were large, the sound of a big boot attacking the ground, the sound of Yankee Jim. In the entirety of that time the family owned the home for over 100 years, there was never a time that they said they weren't haunted in this house. After the home was donated and turned into a museum, the sightings became more exaggerated. Different phantoms started appearing, screams were heard, items would float from place to place. A parapsychologist even reported seeing a phantom dog run through the home at one point. Frankly, I don't believe all of these secondary claims. It kind of feels like people's imaginations ran with the idea of having a haunting once it turned into a museum. But I do believe the ghost of Yankee Jim to be a very real thing. If you do go to this home, make sure you have no valuables with you, or Yankee Jim may just claim them for himself. Number 3 on this list is the Hex House. Yeah, that's right guys, this place is literally called the Hex House, so it's no wonder why it's making the list. News Oklahoma says again, so this is something we feature in our serial killer tour. The new Hex House is inspired by the home that used to belong to Carol Ann Smith. French said the original Hex House, located at 10 East 21st Street, has negative energy attached. I mean, the things that she did with her nephew. They were dumping hot water on people that lived in the duplex next to them. There's also that whole history of her keeping those 2 hostages in the basement and kind of hypnotizing them, putting hexes on them. Yes, it's insane, said French. Claims of windshield wipers or stereos going on while the car is off are frequent if parked nearby. French even says they tested the theory during a tour and claimed she never did it again. We turned the bus off, but then it wouldn't start back up. It wasn't until a lady said she called Carol Ann a bad name and then she apologized. As soon as she was done, the bus came immediately back on, French says. The reason this house is on the killer tour list is due to what went down in 1928, guys. John Blymier, after receiving consultation from a woman named Nellie Knoll, thought that he had been cursed by another man named Nelson Raymer. John and some of his friends broke into the home, which is the Hex House, and then brutally killed Nelson. After they did this, they tried to set the house on fire, but it actually didn't burn. Since then, it's been a hotspot for ghosts, specifically that of Nelson Raymer. Number 2 on this list is the Stone Lion Inn Bed and Breakfast. This is definitely not the Airbnb you want to be booking for you and your pals for that relaxing weekend getaway you've been picturing. Travel Oklahoma says, stay at the Stone Lion Inn Bed and Breakfast in Guthrie at your own risk, as a mischievous ghost child has been seen and felt throughout the home. The spirit, said to be that of 8-year-old Irene Houghton, has been known to squeeze the toes of sleeping guests or even crawl into bed with them. The eerie tap 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 of a child's footsteps has also been heard leading from the second floor to the third. According to legend, the 8,000 square foot home was where the child met her fate when a nurse her with cough syrup containing them. The family later moved on, but little Irene refused to leave. After the Houghton family moved out, the home changed into a boarding house and then a funeral home. Paranormal investigative teams have encountered several other ghosts, including a strong male entity who lingers in the basement where the morgue once was. Through the years of people staying here, there have been tons of reports of sightings and interactions with ghostly entities. As mentioned, it's pretty normal to be visited by Irene, the ghost of the young girl who passed here. A bit of a rarer encounter is that of a ghostly music box though. The owner Becky has come out and said, "One of my guests just the other day came out of this room and said all night long I heard this music box." Now it's unclear whether one of the ghosts was playing this music box or if the box just sort of started on its own, but that would definitely be enough to keep me awake if I was that guest. Pictures, videos, and voice recordings have all been captured here by paranormal investigators many times. It was first investigated by a paranormal specialist 18 years ago, and since then it's been a hotspot for all ghost hunters alike to check out. Unless you're well versed in dealings with spirits, I'd pick a different Airbnb for you and your buddies. And number 1 on this list is Guthrie's Boys Home. This site started out as an orphanage in 1923 when it was built. Now, becoming an orphan would truly be a horrible experience that I can't even begin to understand, but I can guarantee you that it would have been far worse if you got sent to this orphanage. That's because of the horrible atrocities committed here. There is no denying that the maid who worked here back then was sick. Mentally sick, deranged to a point where she felt a desire to these young orphans. It's believed that she would often abuse these innocent children in any number of ways. Now this isn't confirmed, but these are rumors. It's also thought that she even took the life of a few people while she was working here and made it look like an accident. This all culminated one day when she finally took her own life by jumping out of the bell tower and falling to her death. This has obviously led to some spiritual presences staying behind. Lucky for all of us, it's not the spirit of this sick old maid who died. However, as sad as it is, it's the spirits of some of these children here who were wronged. There is apparently one girl who appears to visitors and begs for safety. Crying and screaming children can be heard echoing throughout the building at all hours of the day. The sounds of little feet running up and down the halls are regularly reported as well. Believe it or not, this isn't enough to drive people away though, because it's a popular wedding spot. Definitely not the area I would choose to get married if it was up to me though.
In 5th place, we have the Winchester Mystery House in San Jose. Fun fact, California tends to easily be one of the top 5 most haunted states out of the entire United States. And it was a struggle today not making another list with purely locations from, California. The origins for this crazy tale begin in 1881, when the passing of Sarah Winchester's mother, father-in-law, and husband, William Winchester, of the famed Winchester Repeating Arms Company, all happened in under a year, leaving her with a very large inheritance, assumed to be around $20 million, and a 50% stake in the company, making her one of the wealthiest women at the time. If $20 million doesn't sound super rich to y'all, in today's money that would be about $561.6 million. Chump change, right? After living in Connecticut for the majority of her life, an arthritis diagnosis and meeting with a medium convinced Sarah to start a new life in California. She believed her family to be cursed by victims of the Winchester rifle and began construction on what was originally a 2-story, 8-room farmhouse, which she purchased in 1886. She and her late husband shared an interest in architecture, and after dismissing all of the architects she originally met with, Sarah decided to do all of the home planning herself. She was known to rebuild and abandon construction if anything didn't meet her expectations, which resulted in a maze-like design. It is believed that said maze-like design was mainly intended to confuse and keep spirits from harming her and what was left of her family. According to paranormal investigators Mary Jo Ignoffo and Joe Nickel, the bell tower built on the property was used to summon spirits, and Sarah was known to throw lavish parties for the beings she feared in an attempt to please them. It was reported in the San Jose News in 1897 that a 7-story tower was torn down and rebuilt 7 times. Honestly, I respect the attention to perfection, knowing what you want, and having the money to be able to not settle. As a result of her expansions, there are walled-off exterior windows and doors that lead to nowhere, along with staircases that end suddenly, and as the house grew in size, size, up to 5 additional levels were added to the home. When the 1906 San Francisco earthquake hit, the damage to the home was quite extensive, causing the collapse of the 7-story tower and most of the chimneys. An entire wing was destroyed along with the 3rd and 4th story additions, and pipes began protruding from what were once window boxes. Before the earthquake, the house is believed to have had 500 rooms, and at the time of Sarah's passing in 1922, the house had 160 rooms, 2,000 doors, 10,000 windows, 47 stairways, 47 fireplaces, 13 bathrooms, and 6 kitchens. Visitors to the house today have reported multiple instances of experiencing cold spots, footsteps, cooking smells, odd sounds, whispering, doors and windows slamming, and feelings of being watched. Honestly, I still kind of want to visit it. In 4th place, we have Myrtles Plantation. Located in St. Francisville, Louisiana, and built in 1796 by General David Bradford on top of a former burial ground, this domicile is believed to play home to at least 12 different ghosts. So brace yourselves for a highlight reel. Our first ghosty story begins with a newly married couple, Mr. and Mrs. Clark Woodruff. Mr. Woodruff was a cruel and harmful man and owned numerous indentured servants, which was the icky norm at the time, and one in particular that he liked to, punish went by the name of Chloe. Now, Chloe tried to protect herself from the wrongful punishments by listening in on the Woodruff's conversations and modifying her behavior, which is kind of brilliant. Sadly though, one day after being caught eavesdropping, Clark had one of Chloe's ears cut off. Her mutilation was hidden, at the demand of the Woodruffs, by the use of a green turban. Even though most folks wouldn't see the damage, the painful experience would stay with Chloe and inspire her to make plans for revenge. On the 9th birthday of the Woodruff's daughter, Chloe placed poisonous oleander leaves into the cake, intending to only get them sick so she could nurse them back to health and earn a favor with the family. Desperate times call for desperate measures. Tragically, the dosage was lethal, and it ended up killing the missus and the offspring. After word spread of her actions on the plantation, the other servants were the ones to take revenge. Chloe was hanged by the neck for everyone to witness until the life was drained from her body, and then her body was weighed down by rocks and thrown into the Mississippi River. Multiple visitors to the current location have reported seeing the transparent and ghostly apparitions of a young girl wearing a green turban moving throughout the property. In 1992, the owner took a photo that they believe captures Chloe's spirit. This photo was originally intended to be used to secure an insurance policy for the home in case of fire or other natural disasters, not to prove paranormal activity. The presence of a human figure within the photo was undiscovered until it was developed. Many tests have been done to verify its authenticity, but make sure to let me know in the comments what you folks think after seeing it. Alrighty, what's next? Oh, the next owner of the property, a wealthy family man, and his 5 wards would pass away from tuberculosis on the property. The home was later passed to one of his surviving daughters and her husband, the Winters. Mr. William Winter was a proud member of his community and taught Sunday school out of the home. So one day, as William was teaching, an unknown man rode up on a horse yelling to see him. And as he came out to address the man, he was shot at point-blank range on his front porch. William retreated into the home and staggered partway up the stairs before passing away in his wife's arms on the 17th step of the staircase. The sound of his strong and forceful stomps still linger in the home today, as visitors report hearing heavy footsteps from empty staircases. The overall paranormal activity became more noticeable in the 1970s once it was purchased by the Myers family. Oh, right, remember how I mentioned it was stupidly built over a burial ground? The ghost of a young Native American woman has been repeatedly spotted fluttering about. During the Civil War, the house was ransacked by Union soldiers, and legend claims that 3 were killed in the house, leaving a scarlet stain in a doorway, roughly the size of a human body that cannot be removed.
Number 3 on this list is Bachelor's Grove Cemetery. We just spoke about the most haunted home in America, so it's only fitting that we talk about the most haunted cemetery in America. The Bachelor's Grove Cemetery is located in Chicago, Illinois, and has potentially the widest array of ghost stories that I've ever heard of. It's not the biggest graveyard in the world. In fact, it doesn't even operate as one anymore. It was established in the 1840s and practically abandoned in the mid-1900s. There were rumors that the mafia used to use this place as a spot to dump bodies, as it's reasonably secluded and nobody could see them do it. Its secluded nature, rumors tied to the mafia, and the inevitable vandalism that it did receive could all be reasons why it's haunted today. Now, I was talking about the mafia and gangsters. Well, one of the biggest ghostly sightings at this cemetery is actually a gangster car. The graveyard is right next to a road, and people driving down that road have reported seeing the distinct image of a vehicle in the middle of the road resembling a mafia vehicle. People have actually fully swerved off of the road and crashed their own cars, and then later realized that nothing was there at all. Others have seen a whole farmhouse appear in the graveyard, but when they tried to go to it, it completely disappeared. Cars and farmhouses, these are big apparitions and lead me to believe that the spiritual presence in this cemetery has got to be really strong. In 1991, the Chicago Sun released a very famous picture of the graveyard in which there appears to be the figure of a woman sitting on a gravestone, all in white. The photographer behind this picture claims that there wasn't anybody there when he took the picture and it only came up on the camera. With over 100 ghostly sightings in this cemetery, I do believe that it's claimed to be the most haunted cemetery in America. It's well earned. Number 2 on this list is Waverly Hills Sanatorium. Waverly Hills Sanatorium is located in Louisville, Kentucky and was home to thousands of deaths. At least 8,000 if we're really trying to be exact. The sanatorium was built in 1910 and the main patients that it dealt with were victims of the White Plague. Back then there was no known cure and many of the patients died to this disease. That wasn't the only way that they died here though. It is believed that doctors would use these dying patients as guinea pigs for some drugs or treatments that they were developing. However, oftentimes this would just result in the patient's death. After the White Plague had largely been dealt with, the space was transformed into a geriatric hospital. The liberties that the doctors and the nurses took, they got even worse when this happened. Electroshock therapy was utilized. Major injustices and mistreatments were done on the patients from the nurses. It really all went bad. In the 1980s, this spot was shut down for good, but by that point, the damage had already been done. Now Waverly Hills is one of the most haunted locations in America. People say that there are constant footsteps all over the place even though there's hardly anyone in the building. Doors will slam and lock when no one's even close to them. Phantoms and shadows will stalk people throughout the hallways of the building, seemingly waiting for a moment to strike. Screams and shrieks of former patients can be heard ringing throughout the corridors of the building. Many ghosts haunt the death tunnel, which was a place where they used to move the bodies of the dead. In room 502, there have been reported attacks on people, where they have felt their bodies seize up and get thrown to the ground. In that room, 2 nurses committed suicide. Apparently one of them jumped out of the window and the other one hung themselves because they couldn't live with the ongoing death that happened in this place. This building has seen way too many horrible things in its existence to just be a building anymore. Feel free to look it up on the internet if you're interested, but don't go visit this in person. Number 1 on this list is the Eastern State Penitentiary. This prison is located in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, and when you hear the types of things that went on at this place, it's no wonder that it's haunted as badly as it is. The facility was built in 1829 and was in service for roughly 150 years. Now if this place had a motto, then it would have to be something about solitude. That was the theme at Eastern State Penitentiary: being alone. If you were a prisoner there, then you had your very own tiny little cell where you lived alone, ate alone, slept alone, and just existed alone. The thing is, it wasn't just the cell either. If you had to go to the washroom or leave the cell for any reason, then the guards would put a bag over your head and they would walk you to wherever you're going. The only thing that you will ever know if you go to this place is your cell. The mental strain that that amount of solitude would have had on those prisoners, it would have been insane. This wasn't the only form of punishment though. There were reports of chaining your tongue to your wrist and leaving you like that. They would dunk you in water and then they would hang you outside in the winter until your body literally froze. And honestly, there was a lot more horrible things that they did too that I don't even want to get into. Either way, due to all the horrors, due to all the death, due to all the atrocities that went on in these walls, the prison now boasts its fair share of ghosts. It is currently open to the public, however, I would not recommend going and checking it out. They have various cell blocks that are all known for different ghostly experiences. One of them has extreme echoing voices of laughter as if somebody was going insane. One of them has what it feels like evil shadowy figures jumping from wall to wall. The bloodthirst that these figures have is reportedly palpable. Another cell block has the visions of the dead faces that appear battered and bloodied right in front of you. Gary Johnson, who works to upkeep the prison, had a harrowing experience here before. He was opening up a cell block to clean it when all of a sudden his body stopped functioning and he was completely paralyzed but also totally aware. He felt as if spirits were invading his body and hurting his mind as he was frozen. Finally he was released and ran from the scene. This prison is haunted to its core and it must be avoided at all costs. Number 5 on this list is the Trans-Allegheny Lunatic Asylum. Operating from 1864 to 1994, this asylum, like most of the entries on this list, has certainly been through the ringer. This place was meant to only house 250 people at its max, but on many occasions had over 2,400 people residing here. Everyone was crammed in like animals, and considering this building was never meant to see this many patients at once, the living conditions were pretty horrible. Whenever you cram that many people into a small space together, especially an asylum, some pretty nasty things will go down as well. Several murders have taken place here over the years, along with incidents of patients and workers taking their own life. The haunting of this location was pretty progressive and didn't come on all at once. Reports date back to the early 1900s and got increasingly more frequent as time went on. Eventually it became clear by the later 1900s that this was no longer a usable space and they needed to move on. This is why it shut down in 1994 and has no medical purpose at this point. In fact, now the only thing that it has is ghost tours. The owner of this place know the legends are far stretching with this asylum and intend to make a profit on it. The ghosts are decently friendly here, or at least for the most part aren't dangerous. However, there have been a few instances where individuals have been scared to a point of serious and significant trauma. If you do plan to go here, then make sure you have a thick skin and aren't frightened easily. Number 4 on this list is Haunted Harper's Ferry. Harper's Ferry is a small town in West Virginia that honestly looks like something out of a storybook. It's comprised of roughly 100 19th century restored buildings. As you can imagine, it's a very quiet town and there isn't too much of a big city vibe going on here at all. This place wasn't always quiet though. In the American Civil War, this town played a pivotal role and was fought over multiple times throughout the years. People believe that it was through the death during the Civil War that this place has developed an affinity to spirits. Deborah Block says, at the nearby True Treats historic candy store, chocolate and other candies are brightly lit on tables and in baskets. The cute and welcoming shop is popular with visitors, hardly seeming like a place where a ghost would want to hang out. But store manager Tara Dockman, known as the Ghost Lady, in town for her sensitivity to paranormal activity, says there are 2 ghosts who frequent the store, and she even knows one of them by name. The female has a white flowy gown and she goes to the top floor of the store where there are no customers, she explained. And Colby, a man, likes to show himself and usually shows a shoulder or a pants leg which you'll see walk across a room. They both like to throw candy around and slam doors on customers. Dockman said Colby is a troublemaker who may also push people. She assured me that she had spoken to him about not bothering me while I was in the shop and was hiding in a corner storage area. Tara isn't some nutbag who's the only one who sees ghosts here either. Tons of people in the town have had run-ins with them. In fact, the biggest attraction this town has to offer are the ghost tours that highlight how haunted this place truly is.
In 3rd place, we have the Crescent Hotel. Located in Eureka Springs, Arkansas, it was erected in 1886 and has served several purposes over time, such as a luxury resort, a conservatory for young women, and a junior college. But the strangest mark on its history came in 1937 when it got a new owner, Norman G. Baker. Norman was a millionaire inventor and radio personality who decided to pose as a doctor despite having no medical training and wanted to turn the hotel into a hospital that could cure cancer. He was eventually found out and was run out of town, but his spirit somehow found its way back to the hotel and found some otherworldly company as well. The now operating Crescent Hotel is said to be haunted by at least 8 ghosts, ranging from a small girl to a bearded man wearing Victorian clothing. When current owners Marty and Elise bought the hotel in 1997, they hired 2 certified mediums to do a reading of the building. The mediums found that the hotel showed signs of being a portal to the other side, as in a dimension that holds the spirits of the dead and can be accessed by those on the same frequency as ghosts. That portal is located on top of what used to be the morgue. One thing I like to stress, especially when dealing with angry ghosties, is to never disturb the graves. And a formal archaeological dig was done on the property in 2019, uncovering Norman Baker's bottle grave, with some of the glass containers clearly showing fleshy remains, while others are believed to have held his assorted curing potions that never cured anyone. If you'd like to see them for yourself, they're on display in the Crescent's morgue. Oh, I totally forgot. The morgue, complete with autopsy table and a walk-in cooler where bakers stored cadavers and body parts, are open for public viewing. The experience comes with seeing the ghosts of younglings huddled under the morgue's autopsy table, pleading for help. The reoccurrence of a Baker patient who also served as a hospital assistant being seen in and around room 419, better known as Theodora's room. The early morning loud squeaking of wheels in the third floor corridor, accompanied by sightings of a nurse pushing a gurney full of corpses down the hallway, only to see it vanish into thin air. In second place, we have Eastern State Penitentiary in Philadelphia. The castle-like penitentiary took solitary confinement to new levels when it was built in 1829. Prisoners lived alone, exercised alone, and ate alone. When an inmate left his cell, a guard would cover his head with a hood so he couldn't see or be seen. Now, the prison had to abandon its solitary system due to overcrowding from 1913 until it closed in 1970, although the forms of punishment did not get any less severe. Current reported paranormal happenings have included, disembodied laughter, shadowy figures, and pacing footsteps. Yeah. Elaborating now. Cell Block 12 is known for echoing voices and cackling, while Cell Block 6 is known for shadowy figures darting along the walls, and Cell Block 4 tends to have visions of ghostly faces. Many people have reported seeing a silhouette of a guard in one of the towers. Oh, and that might not sound weird, but there's no way to physically get to the top of the tower today, since the brick stairs crumbled away, many years ago. One of the more legendary tales comes from Gary Johnson, who helps maintain the crumbling old locks at the prison. In the early 1990s, he had just opened an old lock in cell block 4 when he says a force gripped him so tightly that he was unable to move. He described a negative, horrible energy that exploded out of the cell, while tormented faces appeared on the cell walls, and that one form in particular beckoned to him. Although executions were not carried out at Eastern State, the prison was home to its fair share of deaths. At least, 2 guards were killed over the years, as were many inmates, with their spirits still very much present. In first place, we have the Hotel Monte Vista in Flagstaff, Arizona. So with tourism on the rise in the 1920s, residents of Flagstaff decided that building a hotel was the crucial, next step in aiding the city's growth as one of northern Arizona's premier destinations. Fundraising began in early 1926, and by New Year's Day on 1927, the hotel was finally open, offering 73 guest rooms under the name Community Motel, which would later be changed to the Monte Vista, a name chosen by a 12-year-old contest winner. This hotel hosted one of the few hidden speakeasies in Flagstaff during Prohibition, which was, a late-night establishment fed by secret tunnels that were built by railroad workers and ran for miles below the downtown core. Over the years, it has adopted quite a few spirits, and I'd like to elaborate on 3 of them. Out of the many rooms in this historic hotel where the spirits of the past like to make their presence known, let's start with room 220, where an unusual one-time resident, known as the Meat Man, is still causing a stir to this day. This long-term boarder, who spent his days at the Monte Vista back in the early 1980s, had a somewhat unusual habit, hanging raw meat from a chandelier. No one has any clue why he did this, but definitely makes him memorable. One day, the poor schmuck was found dead in his room. Nothing suspicious otherwise, and what has happened in that room since that day is why he made this list. On one such occasion, not long after the Meat Man had passed, a maintenance worker for the hotel was up in room 220 making a few repairs. When he left, he turned off the lights and locked the door, but when he returned shortly after, he found that chaos had erupted in his absence. The television was fully on, playing at full volume, and even more distressing, the linens on the bed had been violently removed, ripped up, and scattered across the room as if in a fit of anger. The maintenance worker in question steered clear of room 220 from then on, but even today, guests in the room have reported the television acting on its own accord, though it, has long since been replaced, as well as the cold touch of a man's hands. Ooh. Next up, the rocking chair of room 305. So the most common report, which has been well documented, is of an elderly woman in the rocking chair by the window. Guests have long told the tale of the chair moving by itself, knocking against the closet, and some have even seen the old woman herself, gazing longingly out the window. While the woman's name is not known, old stories from the hotel tell of a long-term resident who would, sit by the window, day in and day out, looking out into the world, perhaps waiting patiently for someone to return. Finally, I feel like I'd be cursed if I left out the ladies of room 306. In the early 1940s, 2 women of the night were working their shift, only to be picked up by a man who was staying in, room 306 of the Monte Vista Hotel and looking for some company for the night. The 2 women returned to his room, and that night were brutally ended and dumped out of the 3rd floor window to the street below. What happened to these women was horrendous, and it seems that they agree, seeing as their spirits are still haunting this room, lashing out at anyone who dares to stay there. In the decades since, guests have reported the uneasy feeling of being watched, as well as difficulty sleeping. Men in particular tend to be affected, with some claiming that ghostly hands have been placed over their mouths or throats while they sleep.
Coming in at number 5, we have Grafton, Utah. Located just a few miles away from Zion National Park in Utah, the now abandoned town of Grafton can be found. The town was originally established in 1859 when 5 Mormon families nearby were led to establish a town they called Wheeler to plant cotton, which would have been a profitable commodity during the Civil War. After only 2 years, the town was struck by a massive flood starting on January 8th of 1862 that washed away the entire town. However, the pioneers did not give up that easily and moved about a mile upstream and founded a new town named Grafton. They grew cotton, alfalfa and wheat, but life was harsh and many residents lost their life due to the diseases and various accidents. The mortality rate was also extremely high, which accounts for about 77 total graves in the nearby cemetery. The town flourished for a while despite recurring floods, with a church and adobe schoolhouse being built in 1886, but when the Hurricane Canal was built in 1906, many families started to move to Rockville and Hurricane, and by 1920 only 3 families remained in the town, and in 1944 the town's last residents, Frank Russell and his wife Ellen, moved as well. And although the town is now well maintained by the non-profit volunteer organisation of the Grafton Heritage Partnership Project, its dark past can still be felt when exploring the area. People have reported hearing ghostly footsteps over the creaky floors in the empty buildings, as well as the breath of ghostly souls on the back of their necks. The entire town gives visitors a feeling as if being watched, and the shadowy figures can sometimes be spotted in the windows. Another visitor of the ghost town visited the basement of the Russell home and claimed that they found a chair sitting in the middle of the basement with a mark on it as if someone had recently sat on it. They had been exploring for over an hour at this point and had not encountered another person on the way to town or the entire time they were there, but for some reason the print looked brand new, with not a single speck of dust on it. After filming for a few moments in the basement and recording into the silence, they felt a rush of air, as if someone had just walked past them, which scared them, and they decided it was time to leave. There are even rumours of skinwalkers lurking in the area. Even the cemetery itself has many reports of people hearing crying, laughing and chilling screams, especially late in the day and when it's overcast. Some people have even seen a woman in a dress with her hair in a bun walking around the cemetery sobbing, but when they approached her she disappeared into thin air. There is no doubt that there is definitely a very uncomfortable feeling while walking around the gravestones, which isn't surprising knowing the sad history of the people laid to rest there. In at number 4 we have Deadwood, South Dakota. The town of Deadwood is located in South Dakota and gained attraction in the gold rush of 1876. In 1875 a miner named John B. Pearson found gold in a narrow canyon in these northern Black Hills. This canyon became known as Deadwood Gulch because of many dead trees that lined the canyon walls at the time. Practically overnight the tiny gold camp boomed into a town that played by its own rules that attracted outlaws, gamblers and gunslingers along with gold seekers. At its height the city had a population of 5,000, attracting larger than life Old West figures back then. The business district comprised largely of saloons, dance halls, card parlors and bodacious bordellos. They were all hungry for gold and did whatever they had to in order to get some. The business did whatever they could to serve the gold diggers, and sometimes that led to a little bit of conflict. Because of this, the now ghost town still lives with stories of its dead residents haunting present-day hotels and saloons. In 1876 Deadwood survived a smallpox epidemic that nearly wiped out the whole town. There were so many infected that multiple tents were erected to quarantine the stricken. In addition, it suffered 3 major fires. One devastating fire occurred on September 26, 1879, destroying more than 300 buildings and consuming the belongings of many inhabitants. Many numerous economic hardships also followed, pushing it to the verge of becoming another Old West ghost town. One of the most paranormally active sites in the ghost town is the Adams House. Built in 1892 after owner W.E. Adams had a stroke on the premises, his wife was so disturbed by the sounds of his ghost still walking around, rocking the rocking chairs and so forth, that she moved and left the house untouched, exactly as it was when he died. Now visitors and employees report having seen a rocking chair rock on its own, encountered a shadowy man standing at an upstairs window and heard voices and footsteps in rooms throughout the house.
Number 3 on this list is Lake Shawnee Amusement Park. The park is no longer functional, and based on all of the incidents that went down here, that's probably a good thing. It all started in the 1700s when a settler Mitchell Clay and the local Shawnee Native Americans fought and ended with 3 of Clay's dying and lots of Shawnee warriors passing away as well. This was the inciting incident of the tragic movie that is Lake Shawnee Amusement Park. Also, 200 years later in the 1920s, this land was bought and turned into an amusement park. The buyer wasn't aware of this history though and didn't realize the dark mark that had been left here by that battle so many years ago. There were a decent amount of tragic incidents that went down here while the amusement park was operational, but there are two that stand out as being the most stunning. The first one involved a young girl on the swings. While she was on the swings, a delivery truck, without seeing her, backed straight into her and she passed away. The second one involved someone who drowned in the swimming pool because their arm got stuck in the drain. The amusement park had seen enough and shut down in 1966. It was roughly 20 years later that they discovered the history of this place and pieced it all together, assuming that a curse must have been responsible. Locals don't dare go to this place anymore for fear of this curse. It should also be noted that the few who have stepped foot on this place again have reported run-ins with that young girl who died so many years ago. It seems that this curse won't allow her spirit to pass on and now she wanders the area. I'm sure that there are a bunch of other amusement parks in West Virginia that are a lot more fitting and functional than this one. Highly recommend avoiding Lake Shawnee altogether. Number 2 on this list is West Virginia Penitentiary. Would this really be a most haunted place list if we didn't throw a prison on here? Paranormal activity usually favors places that have seen a lot of tragedies and sadness, and this penitentiary has definitely had its fair share. This prison opened up in the 1860s and was active for 119 years before finally being shut down. In that time, it saw over 100 executions, countless riots where people were either severely injured or died, fires, and an insane amount of human rights violations. All of this has led to what we have now, which is just a really haunted prison. Though the prisoners are gone, they're not forgotten, and by many accounts, the ghosts of some of the 998 men who died here still roam free. There's a shadow man that has been seen and even photographed. Staff of the prison have been accosted by unseen forces. Strange noises still echo throughout the cell blocks, and something dark lurks in the bowels of the building. That was a small passage from Moundsville Haunted History who are familiar with the prison. 998 men though. That's how many different individuals are thought to potentially haunt this place. That's literally a full-on ghost army right there, guys. This place must have been horrible if that many people's souls are left wandering around this space. If I was the owner of this spot, I'd do those 998 people a favor and just knock this place to the ground. Maybe then these ghosts can finally rest. And finally, number 1 on this list is Point Pleasant. This has got to be the top spot on our list just considering the amount of lore surrounding the creature here. The Mothman. If you're watching videos on this channel, then I imagine you're already probably familiar with what this creature is, but for those who aren't, the Mothman is a humanoid creature reportedly seen in the Point Pleasant area from November 15th, 1966 to December 15th, 1967. Shayla Klein says, according to legend, Mothman is a black 10-foot creature with wings and red eyes. Articles and newspapers at the time were reporting that the monster was also commonly seen in the TNT area near town, with some locals speculating that perhaps people were really seeing cranes or owls, and others wondering if the creature was created in some sort of mutation accident involving the chemicals associated with storing TNT. Regardless, legend has it that mysterious men in black suits began visiting the town shortly after the sighting reports. The most infamous sighting of Mothman was on December 15th, 1967. Locals said that they saw Mothman on top of or flying over the Silver Bridge, which was a suspension bridge over the Ohio River that connected Point Pleasant, West Virginia, to Gallipolis, Ohio. According to Mothman lore, shortly after the creature was spotted on the bridge collapsed, resulting in the deaths of 46 people. An investigation into the disaster found that a fracture in a suspension chain was the cause. This is one of the most famous American urban legends ever. The amount of people who saw this creature during this period of time and the fact that high-ranking secret officials started to investigate it all point to its legitimacy. It was active for about a year and then just totally disappeared though, and nobody knows what happened to it. The leading theory is that the government was able to capture whatever it was and probably took it to a secret base to study it. If that's the case, then Point Pleasant is most likely safe now, but but be wary of what's flying over top of you if you do decide to go here.
In at number 5, we have Batsto Village in New Jersey. Located in New Jersey, Batsto Village is a historic community centered around the Batsto Iron Works. The site was ideal for ironwork because there was water for mills, abundant wood for charcoal, and naturally occurring bog iron. The well-preserved and lovingly restored village dates back to 1766. As the operation of ironwork grew, so did the village. There were mills, cottages, and over 3 dozen structures and buildings still remain, many from the early 1800s. But by mid-1800s, iron production declined due to the discovery of coal ore. As the need for iron declined, then glassmaking was pursued by the town, but at that point the population already started to dwindle. When Joseph Wharton purchased the property, he primarily focused on forestry and agricultural endeavors. After Joseph Wharton passed in 1909, the property was managed by a trust. The state of New Jersey began buying the land in the 1950s. The last resident to leave the town left in 1936, but not before strange disappearances occurred. According to local legend and a bunch of conspiracy theorists, Ong's Hat offers a portal to a different dimension. In the 1970s, a few professors from Princeton fled there after being mocked by their quantum physics theories. This is when they claimed to have discovered interdimensional travel. According to other local legends, the devil is the 13th born son of the Leeds, the first inhabitants of New Jersey. Mother Leeds gave birth to a healthy baby, who within minutes transformed into this beast. This old ghost town is said to be a hotspot for the Jersey Devil activity, and in the last 50 years there have been numerous reports and encounters with the beast in this area. Some of these encounters include strange tracks along with hearing screams just outside of the village. One sighting of the Jersey Devil comes from a group that saw the creatures crossing the street in front of them. When visiting the village, some say you can feel his presence as if he's walking right behind you. In at number 4, we have Bodie, California. Located up in the Bodie Hills in Mono County, California, near Yosemite, in 1859, 4 miners found a good place to look for gold in the hills near the California-Nevada border. Bodie died in a blizzard not long after, but a small mining town sprung up at their camp. The town was home to 10,000 people. Bodie was a mining camp in 1859 where people had seen gold in its hills. Eventually it turned into a well-populated town. Though like most mining towns, it saw its peaks, its losses, and then its decline. Fast forward to 1962 and the town would be fully abandoned. Although it already showed signs of decline with dwindling numbers at the start of the 20th century, a series of fires forced the last remaining residents to flee the town, leaving it almost exactly as it was in the early 1900s. With the dinner tables still set, shops are still stocked with supplies, and restaurants are still poised to serve long-forgotten meals. Today, the 110 silent buildings sit spaced out for traffic and people that aren't there. Buildings such as a barbershop, a church, a mill, a morgue, and a leaning hotel are held up by a beam and have been left untouched for 100 years. Though it has been left abandoned for years, some of the buildings are in a crumbling state of decay, while others stand strong, full of their original items but long devoid of their owners. There were also 60 saloons and thus a fair amount of danger. People were robbed and crimes occurred quite often, though the curse of Bodie has nothing to do with the fires or the shootings. It started because people started taking artifacts from abandoned buildings. They take weather-worn shoes or pieces of glass from shattered windows. Somebody once ran off with a piano. Those items may seem like they have no value, but all objects carry equal significance in telling the story of Bodie. Thus the curse of Bodie emerged: if you take something from Bodie, bad luck will come around to get you. Because of the rumor spreading of a curse, people who stole items would send them back, often including heartfelt apology letters, explaining that they didn't expect their fish to pass or their romantic life to fail from stealing from Bodie. In at number 3, we have Garnet, Montana. Found in Montana, the abandoned town of Garnet was another gold rush town that drew thousands of hopeful miners. Between 1862 and 1916, gold was mined from the area. During the peak of the town, it had hotels, saloons, schools, and stores in the midst of the town's biggest years. A 1912 fire burned down half of the town, and what was lost was not rebuilt. Many of the remaining structures were in poor condition even when they were lived in and regularly visited. This marked the decline of the town, as after 1917 the mine began to offer less and less, and by the time of World War I the town was almost fully abandoned. Garnet is perhaps the best preserved coast town in the state of Montana. There are plenty of people who believe the abandoned buildings are still home to some of the residents who once lived there. Some visitors have reported hearing laughter and music coming from Kelly's Saloon, which is the most common occurrence. I quote, "We didn't experience anything bordering on the supernatural during our visit, but we we did find the beautifully preserved artifacts to be windows into Garnett's incredible past. Coming in at number 2 we have Jerome, Arizona. Located in Arizona, you will find the ghost town of Jerome. Once a copper mining town, Jerome was the 3rd largest town in the early 1900s. Its streets were filled with 37 saloons, 13 bordellos, and a meager 4 churches in 1917, and again in 1926 after a mine blast damaged the original. A series of ill-fated events at this site would almost lead one to call it cursed. When the Great Depression hit, conditions in the town took a sharp downturn. Plagued with man-made disasters and poor fortune, Jerome's population gradually dwindled from thousands to somewhere between 20 to 50 residents. Finally in 1950 the town was abandoned for good. A number of visitors have recounted other mysterious sightings. Visual apparitions range from human-shaped figures that roam the halls and stairways of the old hotel to a friendly animal that is said to scratch and meow at the doors. Additionally, one of the town's most well-known ghosts is said to lurk at the town's community centre. Formerly called Lawrence Memorial Hall, the building is more often familiarly termed Spook Hall due to several strange happenings. With all the other apparitions wandering about this historic town, the cemetery, of course, known as the most haunted place in the whole town. Visitors here have made numerous reports of dark figures moving about, the sound of ethereal footsteps, and the sounds of distant voices. The old cemetery includes graves dating from 1897 to 1942. And finally in at number 1 we have Cerro Gordo, California. Cerro Gordo is a ghost town located in Death Valley and is considered one of the best abandoned places in California. Cerro Gordo means fat hills in Spanish. It was named this for the vast amount of silver it contained. By the end of 1869 the city flourished and became well known for its promising business. By 1871 Cerro Gordo was well established as a mining town. The American Hotel was completed that year, as were several other permanent structures, a general store, restaurants and saloons. At its height, the town had 5,000 residents. In 1875, Cerro Gordo suffered a series of setbacks, necessitating the shutdown of its furnaces. These problems resulted from a scarcity of ore in the mine, which had lasted for several months, and the temporary drying up of its water supply. In addition, by late 1876, a fire accident happened through some of the mine buildings and the union shaft, and the furnaces were closed the following February due to the disaster. A more lethal blow was dealt by falling lead and silver prices, effectively ending this era of activity at Cerro Gordo. Because of all the tragedy that occurred in Cerro Gordo, there's been multiple paranormal investigations held at the grounds of the abandoned town. While the new owner of the town was purchasing it, he was warned that they might have some visitors hanging around, and by visitors they meant spirits. One of the now owner's ghost stories goes along the lines of, as he was walking toward the bunkhouse, he looked at the window, the curtain pulled to the side and a little face poked out. Under the assumption that the contractors were staying in the bunkhouse, he asked when they were leaving, and he was told that they're gone for 2 weeks. So a little uneasy, he locked up the door and went for a hike. By the time he got back, the kitchen light was on, even with the lock still on the door. Coming in at number 5 we have Goldfield, Arizona. Being deemed as one of Arizona's most haunted places, we have the town of Goldfield. Founded in 1893, Goldfield was a promising land for gold mining. The town grew rapidly, gaining 1,500 residents during its first year. The space was quick to build businesses including stores, a blacksmith, a butcher, a brewery, and 3 saloons. Though the town of Goldfield met its fall just as quickly as it was built up. After 5 short years, the gold ran out and people began to dwindle, eventually leaving it fully abandoned, securing its ghost town status. Being classified as a ghost town doesn't necessarily mean a place is haunted by ghosts, but this is not the case for the Goldfield ghost town. There's plenty of documentation and investigations that point to Goldfield being a paranormal active ground. It is known that a mysterious figure lurks within the shadows of the Goldfield ghost town, Bordello. It is unclear who this spirit would have been in life, yet it is commonly believed he was once a miner who lived in the town. Unexplainable knocks and bangs are heard in the building, and some unfortunate visitors have been scratched. This activity is attributed to a dark character who's usually seen wearing a cowboy hat. Just on the horizon of the Goldfield ghost town sits a landscape made ominous by its name and the legend surrounding it. The Superstition Mountains are cloaked in mystery and at the center of many fables, making them notorious among the paranormal community. The Superstition Mountains carry many secrets, the most famous being the location of a supposed deposit of gold and riches in the Lost Dutchman's gold mine. A curse has kept this treasure safe since the days of Goldfield's mining boom. Many have set out to locate these riches, and many have returned empty-handed or found only death. Countless adventurers have perished in the Arizona heat pursuing this chase. Their ghosts are said to now haunt the mountainside. Other secrets of the mountain have people believing that the hill is a place where evil spirits hid and told stories of a devil that lived behind the mountain. There's also a rumored apparition of a hugely tall skeleton named the Borrego Phantom, which appears to those exploring the mountain after dark. Another layer of creepiness is added to the mountain by the local legend that reptile-looking people surface there after dark. All of these creepy mysteries are summed up pretty nicely in the Superstition Mountain's name. In at number 4 we have Glen Rio, New Mexico. Found on the state border of Texas and New Mexico lies the town of Glen Rio. Founded in 1901, it was a town where wheat and cattle farmers settled and grew a community. Being divided between two states made for some unusual customs in Glen Rio. The mail would arrive at a train depot on the Texas side, but would have to be transported to the post office on the New Mexico side. The Texas side was part of a dry county, so all the bars were on the New Mexico side. Because the gasoline tax was higher in New Mexico, all the service stations were on the Texas side. By 1920, Glen Rio had a hotel, a hardware store and a land office, as well as several grocery stores, service stations and cafes. Though Glen Rio's permanent population never rose above 30 people, the town survived with its tourist-based businesses catering to the many travelers along Route 66. By 1985, only 2 residents remained in the small town, and the Texas Post Office was the only business open. It too has long since closed. Other buildings have overgrown sites, missing windows, or debris surrounding them. The detritus of 4 decades when Glen Rio welcomed tens of thousands, fed and entertained them, and sent them on their way towards Chicago or California. In at number 3 we have Tulingua in Texas. The town of Tulingua, Texas was once a bustling mining town full of life, wealth and promise. Today it's a ghost town with abandoned mine shafts, a general store, an old jail, a church and multiple ghost houses. Tulingua became of interest to local miners in the late 1800s when they discovered cinnabar, a red mercury sulfide. A man by the name of Jack Dawson discovered that mercury could be extracted from the cinnabar, and by 1900 there were 4 mining companies in the area with a population of over 2,000 people. The Chisos Mining Company owned the entire town of Tulingua, and at one point they built a general store, a post office, a hotel, a school, a theatre and even a telephone service. Though conditions in the mine were tough, with the 7-day work week being the standard, working long days in the desert heat led many miners to lose their lives in the mines. To make matters worse, the Chisos Mining Company even paid their workers in coupons, which could only be spent at the company-owned store. The decline started once the mines dried up, companies left and the people left with them. One of the scariest parts of the town is the church, which sits on the hill above the ghost town. One quote says, "As we approached the church, the door opened all by itself. Inside the church, visitors report an eerie feeling when entering the church. Moreover, several others report experiencing blackouts, blurred vision and even hallucinations while exploring the abandoned town." Researchers theorize that this is due to low frequency sound waves in the area that are able to alter people's perceptions of the things around them, and as well as disorient them. In at number 2 we have Ludlow, Colorado. Located about 12 miles north of Trinidad, Ludlow, Colorado is a ghost town known for an infamous event in 1914. A former mining camp, it was the location of the Ludlow Massacre. Beginning in 1910, the resident coal miners grew unhappy over their dangerous working conditions and began to debate a strike. By 1913, a strike had begun, much to the dismay of owner John B. Rockefeller. On April 20th, 1914, there was a massacre in Ludlow, where the Colorado National Guard and Colorado Fuel and Iron Company guards attacked miners, burning their tents to the ground. Known as the Ludlow Massacre, 25 people lost their lives. The massacre was the height of the Colorado Coalfield War, which began a year earlier in 1913. 2 coal mining counties, Las Animas and Huerfano, were the centers of the conflict. The United Mine Workers of America led the strike against the Colorado Fuel and Iron, owned by Rockefeller. They were upset over the horrible working conditions. Both parties led attacks back and forth over the years. Today, the old company town of Ludlow still stands as a ghost town, and the site of the tent city is also kept preserved, now under the care of the United Mine Workers of America. A monument to the deceased was also built by the Union at the site. In addition, the cellar where so many innocents perished is still in place. The doorway can still be seen and the dark depths of the pit can still be viewed. Though this isn't recommended, as many people who visit the abandoned ghost town report a strange feeling when looking through the doorways, and even worse, possible whispers around them with an unexplainable source. And finally, in at number 1 we have Helltown, Ohio. The abandoned town known as Helltown can be found in the Cuyahoga Valley in Ohio. There sits an eerie deserted town known by locals to be haunted. No people live in the area anymore, though there are still remnants of the lives of former residents left behind. The whole town Helltown is surrounded by hazardous roads that seemingly lead to nowhere. Locals believe this was done to confuse any wandering explorers. But the Helltown church seems to have inspired the town's ominous name. The tiny white church is in the center of Helltown and is central to all local theories. Some say the church was a place of worship for practicing Satanists who still lurk around the closed-off roads, hoping to recruit unwelcome visitors. Others believe the town was evacuated after a chemical spill that resulted in bizarre mutations of the residents and animal population. The legend of the Peninsula Python stems from this theory. There even sits an abandoned school bus in the town with legends of its own. The story goes that the bus was carrying a group of high school students who were going to one of the ski resorts near Boston when an elderly woman flagged down the bus. She was in a panicked state and explained that there was a young boy in her house who was seriously hurt. The bus driver, in an attempt to help, turned down her driveway and drove into the woods hoping to help the boy. When the bus approached the house, Satan worshippers swarmed it and sacrificed all those on board. The bus sat back there for over 30 years, standing as a warning to all who decide to venture into Helltown. A local paranormal investigator set out to research the abandoned town, and to his surprise, what he discovered was truly frightening. He describes Helltown as not just truly abandoned, but is home to many spirits and hauntings. His personal experience with a ghost encounter was returning to his car to find strange people looking into his car windows. Both times the people vanished as soon as they saw him approaching the car before he had a chance to speak to them.
Founder Russ McKamey, a former Navy seaman turned haunted attraction enthusiast, doesn't accept any kind of money for this unique experience. Payment is simply a can or bag of dog food. There is a screening process first. Participants must produce a doctor's note, sign a 40-page waiver, pass a background check and drug test, and be screened via FaceTime. A guide has testified that the 40-page waiver signed by participants lists possible risks, that include having teeth extracted, being tattooed, and having fingernails removed. If I didn't already hate the place enough, that does it for me. That's just unnecessary torment. It originally operated in San Diego, but neighbors petitioned to have it run out of the area due to the noise and unsafe attention it brought them, and were successful. There's a total of 3 locations now. Nashville, Tennessee, and Huntsville, Alabama are the 2 that we're going to be talking about though. At the Tennessee location, guests must be 21 or older, or 18 with parental consent, while the Alabama location only allows ages 21 and up. The tour lasts from 8 to 10 hours, but no guest has ever made it all the way through. Now, McKamey originally did not allow safe words for the tour, but has since reportedly allowed them, with guests having the option to use a safe word that ends the tour immediately. The house operates year-round, and there is allegedly a waiting list of over 24,000 people. I just want to know why. During the tour, employees of the manor may physically attack patrons, waterboard them, force them to eat and drink unknown substances, have them bound and gagged, and engage in other forms of physical and psychological anguish. I'm forgetting something. Oh, don't remind me. Oh, right. Participants may also be drugged during their experience. And hey, if that wasn't enough ick for anybody, make sure to remember to smile for the camera while you're enduring this hell. McKamey started filming everything that happened inside the manor as an insurance policy, so he'd have proof of what really happened anytime law enforcement came a-knockin'. In addition, each contestant's experience is live streamed to a Facebook audience of close to 30,000 people. If that's your idea of entertainment, there's a large archive of footage on the official website. So far, no one's been able to escape, and I'm pretty sure everybody leaves with some sort of imprint on their psyche. So big pass from me. Hey, what's creepier than an abandoned schoolhouse with a truly terrifying history? It's hard to think of anything. The Dent Schoolhouse is a haunted house attraction set in an actual super spooky haunted house that changes every year, meaning visitors never know what to expect. Imagine a place where the boundary between the living and the dead kind of blurs a little bit, where your heart races and reality morphs into a realm of terror. Nestled in Cincinnati, Ohio, this haunted attraction is not for the faint of heart. The schoolhouse derives its chilling name from a grim past. Once an actual schoolhouse in the early 1800s, it turned into a grim tale of horror and disappearances. Students vanished without a trace, their fate shrouded in mystery. Legends claim that the school's janitor, Charlie, harbored a sinister secret in the basement. Today, the Dent Schoolhouse stands as a spine-tingling haunted attraction, drawing brave souls from far and wide. From the moment you step inside, the atmosphere is thick with dread. Dimly lit hallways echo with the distant cries of restless spirits, and you're enveloped in a world where the line between reality and the supernatural blurs. The Dent Schoolhouse's sinister reputation stems from its commitment to immersive horror. As you navigate its dark corridors, you'll encounter ghastly apparitions, menacing monsters, and grisly scenes that defy belief. roof. The attention to detail is astonishing, making every room feel like a descent into madness. One of these standout features is the infamous basement, where the malevolent spirit of Charlie is said to dwell. The claustrophobic passages, punctuated by eerie lighting and bone-chilling soundscapes, make it an unforgettable, hair-raising experience. But what truly sets the Dent Schoolhouse apart is the dedication of its performers. The actors are masters of their craft, immersing visitors in a chilling narrative that unfolds with each step. They blur the line between fiction and reality, leaving you questioning what's lurking in the shadows, which means job well done. For those who dare to enter, the Schoolhouse offers an unforgettable journey into the macabre. It's a place where you might disappear into a world of terror, if only for a night. Kinda like how those students disappeared way back in the day. As you emerge from its haunted halls, your heart pounding and your nerves kinda frayed, you realize that some mysteries are best left unsolved. That is, if you make it out. Pennhurst Asylum. So this asylum is a chilling relic of the past tucked away in Spring City, Pennsylvania, and it beckons the brave and the curious alike. Its ominous history, shrouded in mystery and despair, makes it quite the haunting destination for those willing to, take a little peek around its eerie corridors. Once a state school for the mentally and physically disabled, Pennhurst's dark past is a tale of neglect and suffering. Not unusual, but still... Stories of mistreatment and torment linger like lingering echoes in its decaying halls. So the place was shuttered in the 80s, which is all too late in my opinion, but the scars it left behind have given birth to something altogether different. Today, Pennhurst Asylum stands as a nightmarish playground for those seeking a brush with the supernatural. From the moment you step onto its grim grounds, you're enveloped in an atmosphere of dread. The abandoned buildings loom, their windows like vacant eyes watching your every move. Inside, the haunting begins. It's a maze of twisted passages, each more unsettling than the last. The flickering lights cast eerie shadows on peeling wallpaper and rusted beds, remnants of the institution's grim history. The air is heavy with the weight of the past, and the feeling of being watched is inescapable. But it's, not just the decaying infrastructure that chills the bones at this place. The asylum boasts a family of actors who bring the horrors of its past to life. They portray the former staff and patients, their performances teetering on the edge of reality and fiction. You'll feel their anguish and torment, blurring the lines between history and horror. Well, that is if you make it out. One of these standout features is the infamous Mayflower Hall, known for its particularly intense paranormal activity. Here, visitors have reported unexplained phenomena ranging from whispers, shadowy figures, to unrelenting cold spots. Ooh, bother. It's a place where the veil between this world and the next seems disturbingly thin. As you navigate the nightmarish landscape, it's pretty easy to get lost in its dark history. The horrors you encounter are a reminder of the institution's grim past, where people were forgotten and suffering was the norm. Some say that those who disappear into Pennhurst may never truly leave, their spirits forever bound to its haunted halls. In the end, it stands as a chilling testament to the horrors of the past and the terrors of the unknown.
In at number 3, we have Nevada City in Montana. Miners settled in Nevada City in 1963, along with establishing their homes and businesses in this new town. Located in southwestern Montana, the town is 1.5 miles from Virginia City. The town was thriving up until 1876, when the gold miners moved to other promising sites. In 1896, the Connery Placer Mining Company destroyed most of the city's buildings. The company dredged the gulch and later abandoned it, leaving heavy wooden barges. This abandoned town being haunted is old news, as the Nevada City Hotel is reported to be frequented by the apparition of a road agent who lost their life nearby, according to online sources. Visitors have also reported hearing footsteps in the hallways and seeing shadowy figures standing behind their reflections in mirrors. Additionally, the spirit of an older cowboy figure who never speaks but lurks in the hotel rooms and even sits at the bar in the Virginia City. Back when the hotel operated, guests also complained of a weeping woman, always in the same room, only to be told there was no guest in the room in question. In at number 2, we have Custer, Idaho. The mining town of Custer was born in 1879 by gold miners looking for their next gold hotspot. Prospectors discovered gold in what would become known as the Yankee Fork area of central Idaho in 1867. The area was worked on a small scale for more than a decade before the discovery of General Custer Mine. The General Custer Mining Company closed in 1888 and the district experienced a sharp decline. In 1899, the town of Custer has 5 saloons, 3 stores, a hotel and 3 boarding houses, but the town never established even one church. By 1910, most of the mines in the area were closed, and the Yankee Forks boom years came to an end. The combined population of Custer and the nearby Bonanza was just 66 people. The Silver Messenger reports just 2 families remaining in Custer in 1911, and then being fully abandoned the year following. Today, it has been purchased by the US Forest Forestry Service and in conjunction with the Friends of Custer Society, is slowly being made into a historic site. Some original buildings have already been renovated, some are in process, and many others are slated to be restored. Several buildings lost in a 1960s grass fire are due to be replaced with replicas. The Forgotten Town is a landmark for many people such as tourists and especially paranormal investigators. In the old schoolhouse is a museum containing items left behind and showcases the town's unique history. Although interesting, you can't help but get an eerie feeling thinking about the people who once owned these items, as walking into one of these structures is like walking back in time. To think this town was once active with human energy and miners working every single day. And finally, in at number 1 we have South Pass City, Wyoming. Only about 10 miles north of the Oregon Trail is the shell of a town that used to be a busy gold mining camp. Established in a small valley along the banks of Willow Creek, the town was born in 1867. The town was built there because gold was discovered in the Wind River Mountains. By 1868, South Pass City boasted over 250 buildings, 1,000 people, and hundreds of claims. The town was extremely busy as its half-a-mile long main street boasted numerous hotels, restaurants, general stores, 2 newspapers, doctors, a bowling alley, and dozens of saloons. The mining district continued to grow to as many as 3,000 residents. Miners looking for investors and newspapers promoting further settlement in the area exaggerated the region's amount of gold. But for South Pass City, its great success wouldn't last, and just 2 years after its establishment would begin to show its first signs of declining. Hitting a fall in early 1869, the town resurged briefly after outsider capital was poured into the area, but would fall again as expenses and hardships to recover the gold proved too costly for most miners. By 1872, the town was only occupied by only a few hundred people. In the end, South Pass would become a permanent ghost town. By 1949, the last of the pioneer families had moved on from South Pass City, and the buildings had fallen into disrepair. The grounds of the old town are known to be haunted, and Highway 287 that follows the route of the Oregon Trail over South Pass, which is the reason South Pass City ever existed, has had its fair share of ghost sightings. According to a local ghost story, a woman was driving home from a long day in Denver. Her friend had fallen asleep in the passenger seat. After passing through Jeffrey City, the driver spotted a dark, hunched figure walking toward the road in the sagebush. About a half-mile later, she saw the same figure closer to the road. She noted his pig coat as he became clearer. About a half-mile later, still thinking about this man and his surprising reappearance, she reached over to wake her friend and request she take a turn driving. As her friend awoke, she saw the same man at the edge of the road, just crossing the white line onto the highway next to the car. Screaming, they accelerated away and compared descriptions. It was certainly the same man.
At lucky number 5 is Joliet Correctional Center. The Joliet Correctional Center, established in Joliet, Illinois in 1858, holds a storied past that is as captivating as it is haunting. This historic penitentiary served as a house of horrors for over 150 years, housing some of the state's most notorious criminals. Within its imposing stone walls lie a rich history of many eerie and disturbing tales. But the most chilling of these tales is that of the murder of the warden's wife in 1915. Odette Allen, better known simply as the warden's wife, was an aspiring singer before marrying her husband, Warden Ned Allen. The marriage would have her move from her home in Los Angeles to living in the Joliet Correctional Center with her betrothed. Odette was incredibly popular among the inmates. She was known to be a kind and compassionate woman who tried to make the lives of the prisoners a little more bearable by offering them small acts of kindness, such as providing treats or lending a listening ear to their troubles. The inmates would call her things like the Good Angel and the Little Mother at the Big Stir, out of admiration for her benevolence. The inmates would often act as servants to her and the warden, as an alternative to hard prison labor. In June of 1915, the warden went to Chicago to meet with politicians about the building of a new prison. Odette didn't join her husband because the dresses she wanted to wear weren't yet ready. One morning, Odette asked for the help of Joe Campbell, also known as Chicken Joe, a prisoner who had been convicted of murder at the age of 29. He was selected to be Odette's personal servant because of his great behavior and his healthy relationship with her and the warden. He was due for parole the next week, and Odette was going to testify for him at his hearing. Sounds like life was looking out for Chicken Joe, but what happened next would tragically bring all these good things to ruin for the young prisoner. The morning of her death, Odette asked Joe to refill her water bottle, go grab her coffee and a newspaper, and to walk her dog. To this, Joe obliged. But then, an hour later, he would return to the house with smoke coming from Odette's bedroom window. Firefighters were quick to the scene, but were not fast enough, as once they extinguished the flames, Odette's charred body was already laying still on the bed. Upon investigation, they discovered that Odette was SA'd and killed before the bed was set on fire, and suspicions immediately turned to Chicken Joe. Joe was the subject of much scrutiny from police, Illinois citizens, and even fellow prisoners. Even after adamantly pleading innocence, Joe was sentenced to death by the court, but his sentence was changed to life in prison at the last second by a sympathetic governor who believed his story. After the tragedy, strange things started happening in the prison. Many inmates and guards would report seeing or hearing Odette still wandering the halls. There have also been some cases of hearing her singing in the nearby prison cemetery. One night in the 1930s, about 5,000 people went to the cemetery armed in an attempt to vanquish the apparition, but no one could find her anywhere. Amidst the chaos, a dozen people went missing, supposed victims of the ghost. Which to me is crazy. Like, at what point are you so scared of a ghost you need 5,000 people just to get rid of it? And they still didn't even find her. Just give up at that point, guys, come on. Anyway, it is said that Odette remains in the prison in order to protect her boys, the prisoners who were inspired by her kindness and honored her after death through their good behavior. Any visitor that would try to disturb her peace would incur the poltergeist's wrath and suddenly disappear. If you were to visit the prison today, which closed in 2002 and was turned into a historical site, there's still a good chance you might come across Odette's ghost, still wandering and singing. Next up at number 4 is the Congress Plaza Hotel. Constructed in 1893 as part of the World's Columbian Exposition, the Congress Plaza Hotel has welcomed countless guests over the years, including prominent figures such as presidents, celebrities, and even infamous gangsters. Its iconic location overlooking Grant Park and Lake Michigan has made it a popular choice for visitors seeking a taste of vintage luxury. But it is the hotel's dark past and ghostly residents that have set it truly apart. One of the most well-known ghosts said to haunt the hotel is that of a ghostly presence known as the Shadow Man. His story dates back to 1900, when Captain Louis Ostheim, a war veteran haunted by the horrors of the Spanish-American War, sought refuge at the hotel on the eve of his wedding. The captain would often experience PTSD-induced night terrors and suffer from extreme anxiety and paranoia. The night of his death, he awoke suddenly after being consumed by a brutal episode. In his disoriented state, he would search for solace or an escape from his inner demons. And tragically, he took his own life. Ever since that fateful night, the spirit of Captain Ostheim has been seen walking through the Congress Plaza Hotel, appearing as a shadowy figure gliding through the halls with a haunting aura. Guests and staff have reported encountering the Shadow Man on multiple occasions, his spectral form silently following their footsteps, as if seeking some elusive connection or unfinished business. Those unlucky enough to meet the Shadow Man's gaze would begin feeling greatly distressed and having night terrors of their own, some meeting the same fate as him after the fact. As the years have passed, the legend of the Shadow Man has become deeply ingrained in the history of the Congress Plaza Hotel, adding to its reputation as one of Illinois' most haunted locations. The spirit's enigmatic presence, coupled with the tragic circumstances that led to his lingering existence, makes encounters with the Shadow Man as eerie and thought-provoking as they are dangerous. Do any of you guys see any ghosts while staying in a hotel? Leave a comment, because I feel like these days every hotel on the planet is haunted.
Eloise Psychiatric Hospital was a large complex located in Westland, Michigan that operated from 1839 to early 1982. It started out as a poorhouse and farm and eventually developed into an asylum, sanatorium, and hospital. It's had a lot of names over the years, so bear with me here. In 1832, it was called the Wayne County Poorhouse. In 1872, it was the Wayne County Almshouse. Well, in 1886, it was referred to simply as the Wayne County House. In 1913, there were 3 divisions: the Eloise Hospital, which housed, the mental hospital, the Eloise Infirmary, or the poorhouse, and the Eloise Sanatorium, which housed patients with tuberculosis, and all 3 were collectively called Eloise. Oh, that's not the end of the name changes. In 1945, it was named Wayne County General Hospital and Infirmary at Eloise, Michigan, which, bit of a mouthful. By 1974, it had 2 divisions, separating the Wayne County Psychiatric Hospital from the General Hospital. By 1979, it was officially called Wayne County General Hospital, with the Psychiatric Division closing in '82. In its heyday, Eloise was made up of 78 buildings on 902 acres, with 10,000 patients, along with 2,000 staff, serving as the largest psychiatric facility in the United States. Only the firehouse, power plant, commissary, and D buildings still stand as of right now, as well as the cemetery. It had some good things back in the day, housing the first kidney dialysis unit in the entire state of Michigan, and pioneering the use of music therapy, but they also used, hydrotherapy, shock therapy, and and insulin therapy to treat patients. As the years went on, the institution grew larger and larger, which was a reflection in the increases of population in the area. From only like 35 residents in 1989, the complex grew to about 10,000 residents at its peak during the Great Depression. Now to talk about the ghosties. You know, my favorite part. Numerous typical poltergeist activities have been witnessed within the complex, with doors slamming and medical carts and tables being overturned. Generally speaking, there are shadow figures that seemingly drip from the ceilings and ooze from the walls of this place, becoming part of the building itself until they are one and the same. Two ghostly little ones have been seen running the paint-peeling walls of the hallways, turning a corner only to disappear. It's assumed they were inmates at the time Eloise was a poorhouse, where orphans often lived until they were adopted out or passed away. Possibly they died in their youth, or maybe they just relived their lives now without the fear that they had when they were alive. You know, carelessly playing games in a kind of purgatory. Now there's a mysterious lady that appears as a white vapor and has been seen manifesting within one of the buildings that still stand, and her voice has been recorded as she whispers, "Help." Another ghost is that of a doctor said to prowl the halls of the crumbling facility, and even in the afterlife, he searches for an unfortunate patient to practice his scientific methods. Some have reported seeing a specter drenched in water, possibly a reminder of when hydrotherapy was coming into popularity. Other times, the phantasm is seen wearing a smock stained in red, presumably from a lobotomy. Yoicks! Possibly the doctor lingers, tormented by the ghosts of the patients upon whom he practiced. Nowadays, this building is home to 2 different escape rooms, which is super duper fun, so if you feel like risking the ghost's wrath, that's on you. Good luck making it out. Number 1, the Winchester Mystery House. So the Winchester Mystery House in San Jose, California is a labyrinth masterpiece of incredible architecture and paranormal intrigue. Its story begins with Sarah Winchester, the widow of the inventor of the famous Winchester rifle. Legend has it that she believed the spirits of those killed by the rifle were haunting her, and her response was to embark on an unceasing construction project that lasted for decades. The house itself is a bewildering marvel, a maze of staircases that lead to nowhere, doors that open into walls, and windows that peer into adjacent rooms. Its design is an enigma, with the hallways doubling back on themselves and secret passages hidden behind bookshelves. But what makes the Winchester Mystery House truly spine-chilling are the rumors of hauntings. Visitors have reported ghostly apparitions, eerie footsteps, and unexplained cold spots. The layout adds to the unease, as one can easily become disoriented within its winding corridors. One of the most famous rooms in the mansion is the Seance Room, where Sarah herself is said to have communicated with the spirits. It's a place of both fascination and fear, with its ornate details and otherworldly purpose. Over the years, countless tales of visitors and employees experiencing unexplained phenomena at the house have added to its mystique. Some believe that Sarah's quest to appease vengeful spirits has left a lasting imprint on the mansion, making it a hotbed of paranormal activity. It's a place where the boundary between the living and the dead blurs. The Winchester Mystery House is a testament to the enduring power of mystery and the human fascination with the supernatural. After a 2-year hiatus from hosting Halloween events, they've been heavily promoting their latest attraction in time for this spooky season. And with a title like Unhinged Housewarming, it promises to be their scariest yet.
Starting us off at number 5 is the late Queen Elizabeth II. Now, before I do a deep dive into this list, let me just make sure that we're all on the same page when it comes to the alleged alien lizard race that takes up most of our shape-shifting sightings today. There are many out there who believe our world is infested with an entire race of alien lizards who came down from the constellation Draco and have taken over the bodies of the world's most influential leaders and celebrities. These lizard people, if you will, have allegedly infiltrated all of the positions of power in our world, and according to the believers out there, the monarchy is no exception. Now, on to the late Queen. It's no secret that there are quite a lot of people out there who are not big fans of the royal family, and while for some it might just be about an overall lack of likeness towards the monarchy, there are many out there whose hatred stems from a deep-seated belief that everyone in the royal family are in fact shape-shifting lizard people. This all started from some footage that was found online of the Queen, where some particularly strange eyes seem to appear out of nowhere. In the video, the Queen is standing at what appears to be a game of sorts, and then all of a sudden her eyes change to look almost like some sort of crazy demon. Immediately, people were freaked out and jumped to the conclusion that it was because she was a shape-shifting lizard, but others blew it off as just her having bloodshot eyes. But just take a look at that for yourself here. Now, I don't know about you, but I have never seen a bloodshot eye that was completely black before. I'm just saying. Either way, it's scary to look at. As you can imagine, this footage did not help the royal family's rep of being from the constellation Draco, and only further cemented the belief that they are all evil lizards. But is it a shape-shifting lizard or something else equally spooky like a demon? What do you think? Moving on to number 4. Katy Perry. From what I have come to understand about the conspiracy race of the shape-shifting reptiles that supposedly walk this earth with us, is that 2 things are very important. Number 1, as we touched on in the last point, is that more often than not, they are a celebrity or a leader of some sorts. And number 2, it is usually the eyes that give them away. Why the eyes? I don't know. Maybe their eyes are the hardest part to control shape-shifting wise. Like an angsty teenager that can't help but roll their eyes when their parents ask them to do the dishes. Again, I'm not totally sure to be honest, but either way, there are definitely some strange videos circulating the internet out there with some weird stuff going on in the eyeball region. One of the celebs that people found a spooky video of with some weird eyeball action is none other than Miss Teenage Dream herself, Katy Perry. The footage that brought her into this conspiracy theory comes from an interview she did years ago, where for just a millisecond it appears like her eyes change color from a sort of blue to a green, and just for a second it looks like her pupils turn into slits. Now, let's think for a second. A shape-shifting pupil of sorts is possible with certain substances in your system, and they can also change from larger to smaller depending on the brightness in the room. But I'm not entirely familiar with a scenario that can change it from a round shape to a thin slit-like pupil. Plus, apparently, a calling card of these lizard people is that they all have green eyes in their lizard form. So her eyes supposedly changing to green was seen as proof of her real lizard self peeking through. My question is, does the green eyes thing only apply in shape-shifting scenarios? Cause like, lots of regular people have green eyes. Hell, I have green eyes. Does that make me a lizard person? Would I know if I was one? I would, right? I'm probably safe.
Next at number 3 is the Englewood Post Office. H.H. Holmes, no relation to Sherlock, was a deceptive figure who gained infamy in the late 19th century as one of America's first documented serial killers. Operating during the time of the 1893 World's Columbian Exposition in Chicago, Holmes constructed a nightmarish building with a name I'm not even allowed to say on YouTube. But for the sake of brevity, I'll call it Death Castle. Officially named the Holmes Castle or the World's Fair Hotel, Death Castle was a 3-story building located on the corner of 63rd and Wallace Street in the Englewood neighborhood of Chicago. From the outside, it looked the same as any other ordinary commercial building, complete with shops and apartments. However, its true purpose was far more sinister. Inside the castle, Holmes had constructed a labyrinth of secret passages, hidden staircases, and windowless rooms designed for his nefarious deeds. He used his magnetic charm to lure and manipulate unsuspecting victims, often young women, and visitors to the World's Fair into his deadly lair. The castle featured soundproof rooms, gas chambers, trap doors, and a chilling basement equipped with dissection tables and vats of acid. Holmes would typically seduce and swindle his victims before leading them to their deaths. Many were asphyxiated with gas, mutilated, tormented both psychologically and physically, and killed in various gruesome ways. Once they were deceased, Holmes would dispose of their bodies through the building's hidden chutes, transporting them to the basement for disposal. His exact number of victims remains a mystery, but it is believed he may have killed anywhere from 20 to 200 people during his spree. His sinister acts continued undetected for years, aided by his ability to change aliases frequently, making it difficult for authorities to track him down. Holmes' reign of terror finally came to an end when he was arrested in 1894 for an unrelated insurance fraud scheme. That castle didn't pay for itself, I guess. As investigators delved into his background, they began uncovering evidence for his horrifying crimes. On May 7th, 1986, H.H. Holmes was executed. Before his death, he confessed to 27 killings, but hinted at a much higher body count. Afterwards, the infamous Death Castle was later destroyed by a mysterious fire, and a post office was built atop the ruins. Within the Englewood post office, it is said that you can still hear the many screams of Holmes' victims. And there have been reports of those who dared venture to the basement, which survived the fire, and you can still see Holmes killing one of his 200 victims, a phantom that echoes the terrifying events that occurred over a century ago. I just got the chills. Next up, at number 2, is a short one. Resurrection Cemetery. Located in Justice, Illinois, the Resurrection Cemetery holds what it is known to be Illinois' most famous ghost, known only as Resurrection Mary. The story goes that Mary was a vibrant and lively dancer who attended the dance hall in the 1930s. One fateful night, she left the hall after an argument with her partner and decided to walk home alone along Archer Avenue. Tragically, Mary was struck and killed by a hit-and-run driver while walking along the desolate road. Since then, motorists driving along the street will often see Mary's ghost walking along the road wearing a white gown and dancing shoes. In some cases, Mary will appear as a hitchhiker, but by the time the car reaches Resurrection Cemetery, she would suddenly vanish, occasionally taking the driver with her. Remember guys, don't pick up mysterious, ghostly women off the side of the road. It's called stranger danger, and we should all know it by now. Moving on to number 1 is Menteno State Mental Hospital. Established in Menteno, Illinois in 1930, the Menteno State Mental Hospital initially served as a psychiatric facility for mentally ill and developmentally disabled patients, offering them treatment and care. However, over the years, the hospital's conditions deteriorated, leading to allegations of beatings, neglect, and the mistreatment of its vulnerable inhabitants. These inhumane conditions only worsened as time passed, with tales of neglect, experimentation, and even deaths due to inadequate medical attention began to spread, shrouding the institution and its reputation in darkness and sorrow. The hospital was at its worst when 384 patients and staff came down with typhoid fever in 1939 in an incident referred to as the Menteno Madness. The director of the hospital mistook the affliction to be nothing more than a case of diarrhea, but when patients and staff began dying, panic set in. Patients banging on windows, orderlies going missing, doctors deliberately injuring their patients. Everything that could go wrong went wrong. Those who died during the Menteno Madness would later haunt the abandoned asylum after its closure in 1985. Those who visited the old hospital would report seeing patients and doctors alike scurrying about the abandoned halls, but it was those who ventured into the tunnels beneath the hospital that were in real danger. Paranormal investigators have gone down into the tunnels in hopes of finding the rumored ghosts, but are met with a much more sinister presence. It is said that the malevolent doctors who would mistreat their patients wander the complex of tunnels, hoping to release their rage upon anyone stupid enough to enter their domain. What was once a place that healed was now a place that harmed, enthralling thrill seekers to see the mad doctors for themselves, only to pay an unfortunate price. After the repeated disappearances of ghost hunters, urban explorers, vandals, and the like, the building was demolished by Wrecking Ball in 2015 to discourage anyone from entering the haunted grounds.